This is CPRmetro.org, community progressive radio for the metropolitan New York area and the world, and this is the CPR Morning Show.
Arise, ye workers, from your slumber. Arise, ye prisoners of want. That's right. For reason in revolt now thunder. Chains of hatred, greed, and fear. Ha ha! Away with all your superstitions. Serve our masses. Arise, arise. We'll change henceforth the old tradition and spurn the dust to win the prize. So comrades, come on and rally. Then the last fight let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. And the last fight let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race. No more deluded by reaction. On tyrants only we'll make war. The soldiers too will take strike action. They'll break ranks and fight no more. And if those cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, each at the forge must do their duty, and we'll strike while the iron is hot. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. And the last fight let us face. The International unites the whole beautiful human race. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. Ha! And the last fight let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race.
United Nations officials have paid tribute to the late president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, who passed away on Tuesday. The 58-year-old leader returned to his country last month after cancer treatment in Cuba. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had just briefed the Security Council late on Tuesday when he was asked about the death of President Chavez.
As a president of Venezuela, he has been making his own contributions to his own country's development. At the same time, as a Secretary General, while I will be able to issue a more formal statement, I'd like to convey my deepest condolence to the families and people and government of Venezuela on the loss of President Chavez.
Ambassador Vitaly Churkin of Russia, the president of the Security Council for March, described the death of President Chavez as a tragedy.
He was, I think, a great politician for his country, for Latin America and for the world. And of course, he played a very important role in the development of relations between Venezuela and Russia. So we feel very badly about it.
The late president of Venezuela had addressed the United Nations General Assembly on several occasions. Jerry Adams, United Nations.
Pongo por delante de nosotros al comandante de todos los comandantes, al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo y su mensaje liberador, al Cristo y su mensaje de amor, de la justicia social. Y los llamo a todos. Los que quieran patria, vengan conmigo para que sigamos haciendo patria. Vengan conmigo. Rumbo al socialismo.
The General Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Mr. Hugo Chavez Frias, President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Mr. Hugo Chavez Frias, President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Señora Presidenta,
Madam President,
Jefes de Estado,
Excellencies, Heads of State, Heads of Government,
y altos representantes
High
del
Representatives of the governments of the world.
Muy buenos días
Good morning
a todos y a todas.
to all of you.
En primer lugar,
First of all,
quiero invitarles
I would like to invite you, very respectfully,
no hayan podido leer este libro,
to those who have not read
que
this
lo
book,
leamos.
to read it.
Noam Chomsky,
Noam
uno de
Chomsky,
los más prestigiosos
one of the most prestigious
de esta América y del mundo.
American
Chomsky.
and world intellectuals.
Uno de sus más
Noam
recientes trabajos.
Chomsky, and this is one of his most
Hegemonía,
recent books, Hegemony or Survival.
Hegemonía o supervivencia.
Hegemony or
La
Survival,
estrategia imperialista
the
de
imperialist
Estados
strategy of the United
Excelente
States.
trabajo para
It's
entender
an
lo
excellent
que ha pasado
book
en el mundo
to help us understand
XX,
what has been happening in the
lo que hoy
world
está
throughout the
pasando,
20th century and
la
what's
más grande
happening
amenaza que se
now,
cierne sobre
and
nuestro
the
planeta,
greatest threat looming
la
over
pretensión
our
hegemónica
planet,
del
the
imperialismo
hegemonistic pretensions of the American empire are placing at risk the very survival of the human species.
Seguimos alertando sobre ese peligro.
We continue to warn you about this danger, and we appeal to the people of the United States
Esta amenaza
and the world
que es como
to halt
la propia
this
espada de
threat,
Damocles. Yo pensaba
which is like a
leer
sword
un capítulo,
hanging
pero
over our heads.
por respetar
I
el
had
tiempo,
considered
también lo
reading
dejo
from
como una
this
recomendación.
book, but
Se
for
lee
the sake of
rápido.
time, I should just leave it as a recommendation. It reads easily. It's a very good book. I'm sure, madam, you are
Está
familiar
publicado
with it.
en inglés,
It's
alemán,
appears in
ruso,
English,
en
in
árabe.
Russian, in Arabic, in German.
Yo creo que los primeros ciudadanos que deberían
I
leer
think
este
that
libro
the
son los
first
ciudadanos,
people who
hermanos y
should
hermanas
read
de
this
los
book
Estados Unidos.
are our brothers and sisters in the
Porque la
United States,
amenaza la tienen en su propia casa.
because their threat
El
is
diablo
in
está
their
en casa,
own
pues.
house. The devil is right
El
at
diablo,
home.
el propio
The
diablo está en
devil
casa.
himself is right in the
Ayer vino el
house.
diablo aquí.
And the devil came here yesterday.
Ayer estuvo el diablo
Yesterday,
aquí.
the devil came here. Right here.
En este mismo lugar
Right here.
huele a azufre
And it
todavía.
smells of sulfur still today.
Esta mesa donde me ha tocado hablar.
This table that I am now
Ayer,
standing in front of.
Señoras, señores,
Yesterday,
desde
ladies and
esta misma
gentlemen,
tribuna,
from this
el
rostrum,
señor presidente de los
the
Estados
President
Unidos, a quien
of
yo llamo
the
el diablo,
United States, the gentleman to whom I refer as the
vino
devil,
aquí
came here
hablando como dueño del mundo,
talking as if he owned the world,
como dueño del mundo.
truly, as the owner of the world.
Un psiquiatra no estaría de más
I think we
para
could call a
analizar el
psychiatrist
discurso
to
de ayer
analyze
del
yesterday's
presidente de los
statement
Estados Unidos.
made by the President of the United
Como
States.
vocero del imperialismo vino a dar
As the spokesman of
sus
imperialism,
recetas
he came to share his nostrums
para tratar de mantener el
to
actual esquema de
try
dominación,
to preserve the
explotación
current pattern
de
of
saqueo
domination,
a los pueblos del
exploitation,
mundo.
and pillage of the peoples of the
Una
world.
película de Alfred Hitchcock
An Alfred Hitchcock
estaría buena.
movie
Incluso yo propondría
could use it as a
un título,
scenario. I would
La
even
receta
propose a title,
del diablo.
The Devil's
Es
Recipe.
decir, el imperialismo norteamericano, y aquí lo dice Chomsky,
As
con una
Chomsky
claridad
says
meridiana
here
y
clearly
profunda,
and in depth. The American empire is doing all it can to consolidate its hegemonistic system of domination, and we cannot allow them to do that. We cannot allow world dictatorship to be consolidated. The world tyrant's statement, cynical, hypocritical, full of this imperial hypocrisy from the need they have to control everything. They say they want to impose a democratic model, but that's their democratic model. It's the false democracy of elites, and I would say a very original democracy that's imposed by weapons and bombs and firing weapons. What a strange democracy. Aristoteles might not recognize it, or others who are at the root of democracy. What type of democracy do you impose with marines and bombs and... The President of the United States yesterday said to us right here in this room, and I'm quoting, "Anywhere you look, you hear extremists telling you you can escape from poverty and recover your dignity through violence, terror, and martyrdom." Wherever he looks, he sees extremists. And you, my brother, he looks at your color and he says, "Oh, there's an extremist." Evo Morales, the worthy president of Bolivia, looks like an extremist to him. The imperialists see extremists everywhere. It's not that we are extremists. It's that the world is waking up. It's waking up all over, and people are standing up. I have the feeling, dear world dictator, that you are going to live the rest of your days as a nightmare, because the rest of us are standing up. All those of us who are rising up against American imperialism, who are shouting for equality, for respect, for the sovereignty of nations. Yes, you can call us extremists, but we are rising up against the empire, against the model of domination. The president then, and this he said himself, he said, "I have come to speak directly to the populations in the Middle East to tell them that my country wants peace." That's true. If we walk in the streets of the Bronx, if we walk around New York, Washington, San Diego, in any city, San Antonio, San Francisco, and we ask individuals, the citizens of the United States, what does this country want? Does it want peace? They'll say yes, but the government doesn't want peace. The government of the United States doesn't want peace. It wants to exploit its system of exploitation, of pillage, of hegemony through war. It wants peace. Well, what's happening in Iraq? What happened in Lebanon? Palestine. What's happening? What's happened over the last 100 years in Latin America and in the world? And now threatening Venezuela. New threats against Venezuela, against Iran. He spoke to the people of Lebanon. Many of you, he said, have seen how your homes and communities were caught in the crossfire. How cynical can you get? What a capacity to lie, shamefacedly. The bombs in Beirut with millimetric precision? This is crossfire? He's thinking of a Western, when people would shoot from the hip and somebody would be caught in the crossfire. This is imperialist fire, fascist, assassin, genocidal. The empire and Israel firing on the people of Palestine and Lebanon. That is what happened. And now we hear we're suffering because we see the homes destroyed. The President of the United States came to talk to the peoples
Vino a hablarle a los pueblos.
to the peoples of the world.
Vino a decir además,
He came to say,
traje, señora presidenta, unos documentos, ¿no?
I brought some documents with me because this morning I was reading some statements, and I see that he talked to the people of Afghanistan, the people of Lebanon, the people of Iran, and he addressed all these peoples directly, and you can wonder, just as the President of the United States addresses those peoples of the world, what would those peoples of the world tell him if they were given the floor? What would they have to say? And I think I have some inkling of what the peoples of the South, the oppressed people, think. They would say, Yankee imperialist, go home. I think that is what those people would say if they were given the microphone and if they could speak with one voice to the American imperialists. And that is why, Madam President, my colleagues, my friends, last year, we came here to this same hall, as we have been doing for the past 8 years, and we said something that has now been confirmed, fully confirmed. I don't think anybody in this room could defend the system. Let's accept, let's be honest, the UN system born after the Second World War collapsed. It's worthless. Oh yes, it's good to bring us together once a year, see each other, make statements, and prepare all kinds of long documents and listen to good speeches like Evo's yesterday's or President Lula's. Yes, it's good for that. And there are a lot of speeches, and we've heard lots, and the President of Sri Lanka, for instance, and the President of Chile. But we, the Assembly, have been turned into a merely deliberative organ. We have no power. No power to make any impact on the terrible situation in the world. And that is why Venezuela once again proposes here today, 20 September, that we establish the United Nations. Last year, Madam, we made 4 modest proposals that we felt to be crucially important. We have to assume these responsibilities. Our heads of state, our ambassadors, our representatives, and we have to discuss these. The first is expansion, and Lula talked about this yesterday right here. The Security Council, both as regards permanent and non-permanent categories. New developing countries and LDCs must be given access as new permanent members. That's step 1. Second, effective methods to address and resolve world conflicts. Transparent debates, transparent decision-making. Point 3, the immediate suppression, and that is something everyone's calling for, of the anti-democratic mechanism known as the veto. The veto on decisions of the Security Council. Let me give you a recent example. The immoral veto of the United States allowed the Israelis with impunity to destroy Lebanon, right in front of all of us, as we stood there watching. A resolution in the Council was prevented. Fourthly, we have to strengthen, as we've always said, the role, the powers of the Secretary General of the United Nations. Yesterday, the Secretary General practically gave us a speech of farewell, and he recognized that over the last 10 years, things have just gotten more complicated. Hunger, poverty, violence, human rights violations have just worsened. That is the tremendous consequence of the collapse of the United Nations system and American hegemonistic pretensions. Madam, Venezuela a few years ago decided to wage this battle within the United Nations. by recognizing the United Nations as members of it that we are, and lending it our voice, our thinking. Our voice is an independent voice to represent the dignity and the search for peace and the reformulation of the international system, to denounce persecution and aggression of hegemonistic forces in the planet. This is how Venezuela has presented itself. Bolivar's home has sought a non-permanent seat on the Security Council. Let's see. Well, there's been an open attack by the U.S. government, an immoral attack to try and prevent Venezuela from being freely elected to a post in the Security Council. The Imperium is afraid of truth, is afraid of independent voices. It calls us extremists, but they are the extremists. And I would like to thank all the countries that have kindly announced their support for Venezuela, even though the ballot is a secret one and there's no need to announce things. But since the Imperium has attacked openly, this strengthens the convictions of many countries, and their support strengthens us. Mercosur, as a bloc, has expressed its support. Our brothers in Mercosur, Venezuela, with Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, is a full member of Mercosur, and many other Latin American countries, CARICOM, Bolivia, have expressed their support for Venezuela. The Arab League, the full Arab League, has voiced its support, and I am immensely grateful to the Arab world, to our Arab brothers, our Caribbean brothers. The African Union, almost all of Africa, has expressed its support for Venezuela, and countries such as Russia or China, and many others. I thank you all warmly on behalf of Venezuela, on behalf of our people, and on behalf of the truth. Because Venezuela, with a seat on the Security Council, will be expressing not only Venezuela's thoughts, but it will also be the voice of all the peoples of the world, and we will defend dignity and truth. Over and above all of this, Madam President, I think there are reasons to be optimistic. A poet would have said, helplessly optimistic, because over and above the wars and the bombs and the aggressive and the preventive war and the destruction of entire peoples, one can see that a new era is dawning. As Silvia Rodriguez says, the era is giving birth to a heart. There are alternative ways of thinking. There are young people who think differently, and this has already been seen. Within the space of a mere decade, it was shown that the end of history was a totally false assumption, and the same was shown about Pax Americana and the establishment of the capitalist neoliberal world. It has been shown, this system, to generate mere poverty. Who believes in it now? What we now have to do is define the future of the world. Dawn is breaking out all over. You can see it in Africa, in Europe, in Latin America, and Oceania. I want to emphasize that optimistic vision. We have to strengthen ourselves, our will to do battle, our awareness. We have to build a new and better world. Venezuela joins that struggle, and that's why we are threatened. The U.S. has already planned, financed, and set in motion a coup in Venezuela, and it continues to support coup attempts in Venezuela and elsewhere. President Michelle Bachelet reminded us just a moment ago the horrendous assassination of the former Foreign Minister Orlando Letelier. And I would just add one thing. Those who perpetrated this crime are free. And that other event where an American citizen also died were Americans themselves. They were CIA killers, terrorists. And we must recall in this room that in just a few days there will be another anniversary. 30 years will have passed from this other horrendous terrorist attack on the Cuban plane where 73 innocents died, a Cubana de Aviación airliner. And where is the biggest terrorism of this terrorist of this continent who took the responsibility for blowing up the plane? He spent a few years in jail in Venezuela thanks to CIA and then government officials. He was allowed to escape, and he lives here in this country, protected by the government, and he was convicted. He has confessed to his crime, but the U.S. government has double standards. It protects terrorism when it wants to, and this is to say that Venezuela is fully committed to combating terrorism and violence, and we are one of the peoples who are fighting for peace. Luis Posada Carriles is the name of that terrorist who is protected here. And other tremendously corrupt people who escaped from Venezuela are also living here under protection. A group that bombed various embassies, that assassinated people during the coup. They kidnapped me and they were going to kill me, but I think God reached down and our people came out into the streets and the army was true. And so I'm here today. But these people who led that coup are here today in this country protected by the American government. And I accuse the American government of protecting terrorists and of having a completely cynical discourse. We mentioned Cuba. Yes, we were just there a few days ago. We just came from there, happily. And there you see another era born. The summit of the 15, the summit of the non-aligned, adopted a historic resolution. This is the outcome document. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it. But you have a whole set of resolutions here that were adopted after open debate in a transparent manner. More than 50 heads of state. Havana was the capital of the South for a few weeks, and we have now launched once again the group of the non-aligned with new momentum. And is there anything I could ask all of you here, my companions, my brothers and sisters? It is to please lend your goodwill, to lend momentum to the non-aligned movement for the birth of the new era, to prevent hegemony and to prevent further advances of imperialism. And as you know, Fidel Castro is the president of the non-aligned for the next 2 years, and we can trust him to lead the charge very efficiently. If unfortunately they thought, oh, Fidel was going to die, but they're going to be disappointed because he didn't, and he's not only alive, he's back in his green fatigues, and he's now presiding the non-aligned. So, my dear colleagues, Madam President, a new strong movement has been born, a movement of the South. We are men and women of the South. With this document, with these ideas, with these criticisms, I'm now closing my file. I'm taking the book with me, and don't forget, I'm recommending it very warmly and very humbly to all of you. We want ideas to save our planet, to save the planet from the imperialist threat. And hopefully, in this very century, in not too long a time, we will see this new era, and for our children and our grandchildren, a world of peace based on the fundamental principles of the United Nations, but a renewed United Nations. And maybe we have to change location. Maybe we have to put the United Nations somewhere else, maybe a city of the South. We've proposed Venezuela. You know that my personal doctor had to stay in the plane. The chief of security had to be left in a locked plane. Neither of these gentlemen was allowed to arrive and attend the UN meeting. This is another abuse and another abuse of power on the part of the devil. It smells of sulfur here, but God is with us, and I embrace you all. May God bless us all. Good day to you.
Oh,
Pongo por delante de nosotros al comandante de todos los comandantes, al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo y su mensaje liberador, al Cristo y su mensaje de amor, de la justicia social. Y los llamo a todos. Los que quieran patria, vengan conmigo para que sigamos haciendo patria. Vengan conmigo. Rumbo al socialismo.
On the legacy that Hugo Chavez leaves behind, I'm joined by Pepe Escobar, an investigative journalist and Asia Times correspondent covering Latin America. Thank you for joining us. So Venezuela begins a new chapter in its history. Those were the words of U.S. President Barack Obama. What's the overt message that he's giving there?
In fact, Obama's message was a bit ridiculous. You know, he said that we're going to stand united with the Venezuelan people. What kind of people does he mean? Does he mean that the people who elected and re-elected Chavez in 13 out of 14 democratic elections? Or does he mean these people who go to New York and Miami to trade martinis and demonize Chavez and the Chavistas as evil, dangerous communists? This is ridiculous. The most important thing, in my opinion, Chavez, in terms of a political leader, he was always referring to an international revolutionary tradition, from Mao Zedong to Che Guevara. He was like an Elvis of modern geopolitics. Bigger than Elvis, in fact, because he won almost all the elections that he participated. And the thing is, why this demonization of Chavez, even post-mortem, and it will grow, believe me, especially in the US. First of all, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. So the United States and European Union, they can say all you need is love, or sing all you need is love to those ghastly petromonarchies in the Persian Gulf. But in Venezuela, the leader of Venezuela decided to use the oil wells to the benefit of the lower classes in Venezuela. This is something unheard of in the Persian Gulf. And that's why he is being demonized and will continue to be demonized. The verdict, the historical verdict on Chavez, it's complicated. It will take a few years to put him in a revolutionary tradition as a popular leader, and in terms of ending with the hegemony of imperialistic interests in Latin America. So after Chavez, remember, came Lula in Brazil, came Correa in Ecuador, came Mujica in Uruguay, Morales in Bolivia, leftist progressive governments all over, especially South America. And Chavez's ideas was always better integration of South and Central America, Latin America in general. So he had myriad opportunities to try to exercise that via UNASUR, for instance, the Union of South American Countries, Telesur, which is a media company controlled by a Venezuelan state, but against private interests, which of course are golpistas, as we say in South America. Coming back to that coup in 2002, which was a faction of the military allied with very powerful.
I'm sorry, Pepe, I've got to cut in here.
Supported by the US.
I've got to come in here. What do you make of the accusations from Caracas, from Vice President Maduro in particular, about accusations of foul play in Chavez's death?
This is very complicated because we don't have proof. Remember, it took us years to understand what really happened to Arafat. That was in 2004. It took 6 years to discover that Arafat was poisoned by polonium 2010. It could be the same thing with Chavez. It's possible. Don't forget, okay, this is not a conspiracy theory. The CIA tried to poison Fidel Castro 1,000 times. Maybe they had a break with Chavez as well. Nobody knows, in fact. So we have to understand this, not in terms of a conspiracy theory, but we have to always hark back to the military coup in 2002. This was promoted by Washington, organized with the American embassy in Caracas, with these powerful Venezuelan players who always go back to Miami or New York. So they have a reason, the Chavistas, to be slightly paranoid about it. We still don't know the facts. As we still don't know the facts about the cancer of Hugo Chavez, in fact, because information was withheld from public opinion for the past few months. And it's crazy because then you watch Fox News today, they're saying that bad Cuban medicine killed Hugo Chavez, which is completely stupid. There are over 30,000 Cuban doctors helping poor people in Venezuela. You know, this speaks for itself. Can you imagine if we had these doctors helping poor people in the U.S. as well? What would Barack Obama say about that?
All right, got to jump in. It was a neck-and-neck presidential race last year. What are the chances of Chavez's chosen successor, in this case Maduro, claiming power now?
It's very easy. Maduro, he's not an articulator like Cabello, which is the president of the National Assembly. In fact, there wasn't a speculation that Cabello would be in power for the next 30 days before the next elections. No, it's going to be Maduro. He's going to run as vice president, and he's going to win. First of all, because the opposition, they prefer Miami, New York, just like the Venezuelan middle classes, like the other South American middle classes and upper middle classes, which abhor the fact that in Venezuela, in Ecuador, in Uruguay, in Argentina, in Brazil, there was an enormous redistribution of wealth these past 10 years or so. So he's going to win. The problem is, can he keep what we called the Bolivarian socialist revolution in Venezuela, which is a misnomer? It's not exactly a revolution. It's a more participative government. It's a more inclusive government, but it's not socialism at all. It has elements of neoliberalism as well. How this is going to be organized without this larger-than-life Elvis of geopolitics, which was Hugo Chavez. And expect a lot of disturbance inside Venezuela, because the disorganized opposition and some small faction of the military, they will be talking to Washington, Miami, New York on a daily basis. What about our next coup, you know?
All right, we have to leave it there. Pepe Escobar, investigative journalist for the Asia Times. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Pongo por delante de nosotros al comandante de todos los comandantes, al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo y su mensaje liberador, al Cristo y su mensaje de amor, de la justicia social. Y los llamo a todos. Los que quieran patria, vengan conmigo para que sigamos haciendo patria.
Wrapping up, another summit was getting underway. Venezuela's Hugo Chavez hosted the second South America-Africa summit, which gave birth to a new bank meant to serve as a counterweight to the International Monetary Fund. Perhaps the most talked about guest was Muammar Gaddafi. Chavez expressed great admiration for the Libyan leader, who was on his first visit to Latin America since coming to power 40 years ago. Our correspondent François-Xavier Freeland brings us this report on the developing relationship between the two heads of two oil-rich nations.
Muammar Gaddafi received a hero's welcome when he arrived on Venezuela's Margarita Island. The Libyan leader was almost handed the keys to the city last weekend. At the airport, pro-Chavez activists, likely brought in for the occasion, sported T-shirts bearing his likeness, among them a convert to Islam.
I think Mr. Gaddafi is a very important man, a revolutionary, a socialist. He has a strong ideology. He comes with other ideas from another continent, with another culture across which he's brought in Islam.
At last weekend's African-South American summit, crowds waited for Gaddafi with an almost religious fervor, lining the roads on the way from the airport to show their support. After the leader of the Libyan revolution set up his trademark tent in the middle of the Hilton Hotel, even the limelight-loving Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez excused himself from the press to greet him personally.
The path to saving the world, to saving humanity, starts here. Well then, good night to you all. I have to go and see Gaddafi. I think he's over there. Good night.
Books written by Gaddafi were being given away, and the leader's image was everywhere. Back in the conference hall, the two leaders were acting like old friends, smiling and complimenting each other. At least when they weren't launching into anti-imperialistic diatribes.
It's a friendship each one has for the other. It's quite a normal relationship. Libya has been considered as part of the axis of evil, and so Venezuela has voluntarily made itself a part of this quote-unquote axis of evil. President Chavez said it during his speech at the United Nations, so it's a way of saying that multipolarism, that new southern geopolitics, are making alliances that aren't at all traditional.
But not everyone's a fan of those new alliances, like this Margarita local who wasn't disguising his discontent.
Dictators, dictators, dictators. Gaddafi and the other one on the island, they're all terrorists.
Even so, over the course of the weekend, Chavez and Gaddafi succeeded in rallying many of the South American and African leaders to their socialist and anti-colonialist rhetoric, including moderates like Mali's Amadou Touré. It seems as though a new southern partnership has been born, perhaps even an ideological counterweight to the Western world, which is something both Gaddafi and Chavez have been calling for.
This is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world. And we are commemorating the life of the late Venezuelan President, Hugo Chavez.
Venezuela, como en casi toda la América Latina, venía galopando el proyecto del neoliberalismo salvaje, que hay una mano invisible, el mercado que todo lo arregla. Mentira, mentira, 1000 veces mentira. Claro que hay otros caminos, y en Venezuela lo estamos demostrando. He tenido que aguantar las más grandes presiones internacionales, pero no me importa nada. Si algún día me toca bajar al quinto infierno para defender al pueblo bolivariano de Venezuela, pues me iré al quinto infierno a defenderlo de mandinga.
In Caracas, Venezuela today, violence as a means to an end. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez was forced from office after a controversial 3-year term.
Following a military coup, Venezuela is apparently under the control of the army. The fate of Chavez himself remains unclear.
The Chavez reign was controversial from the start. He was critical of the U.S. and a close friend of Fidel Castro.
President Chavez has had a rule that has been controversial and has not met with widespread popular support within Venezuela or among his neighbors, and certainly in the United States with President Bush.
It has already led to the end of an oil production strike, leaving the United States hopeful that a new government will help stabilize Venezuela's oil industry, the world's 4th largest exporter.
Seven months before the coup, we had come to Venezuela to make a documentary about President Hugo Chavez. We wanted to get behind the layers of myth and rumour that surrounded this larger-than-life Latin American leader. In 1998, Chavez had been democratically elected in a landslide victory. In a country of immense oil wealth and deep inequalities, a country of huge importance to the United States, Chavez stood out as a controversial and fascinating figure. Inspired by Simón Bolívar, the man who had liberated Venezuela from Spanish rule in the 19th century, Chavez, through his self-proclaimed Bolivarian revolution, now aimed to free Venezuela from a new form of domination, that of the free market policies being imposed on Venezuela by Washington.
Los sectores empresariales que están ahí cerca de nosotros, Berejabal, todo lo de Fede Industria. Bueno, correcto. Bueno, hermano, mira lo que dice esto aquí, ¿no? Elogio de la globalización. Este es un francés, yo lo conocí por allá en París. ¿Qué significa mundialización? ¿Existe una única manera de globalización? ¿Quiénes son en realidad los mundialistas? No podemos permitir que sean denominados mundialistas aquellos que pretenden, por encima de todo, someter al mundo a su propia codicia, y antimundialistas aquellos que se oponen a sus designios. Imagínate.
Como la gente no se va a dejar, el neoliberalismo conduce a una polarización.
Los neoliberales son antimundialistas, van a acabar con el mundo.
Claro, porque polariza.
No, y además acabar con el mundo desde el punto de vista real.
El pueblo es sabio y paciente, es el decir de los viejos, que al cantar de guacharaca saben calcular el tiempo. Dicen que viene la hora, mira, para ponernos contentos. Se fue Bolívar.
The overwhelming majority of Chavez's support came from the poor, who represent 80% of the population. Venezuela is the 4th largest supplier of oil in the world, but only a minority had ever reaped the rewards. Chavez had promised to redistribute the wealth and to involve people in the political process.
La patria es una mujer y el regreso para amarla contra los que se desvelan tan solo por disfrutarla, y en vez de darle caricias lo que hacen es manosearla. Vámonos para allá, vamos a hacer encuentro, vámonos para allá, vamos a hacer encuentro, vámonos para allá, vamos a hacer encuentro. ¡Bravo!
presidente, tómalo en cuenta. Un valor de nuestro territorio.
Claro, y tú le prestaste tu hijo.
Mi hijo. Ese era un niño que se cargó ahorita ahí, que estaba pidiendo la boca. Y mírelo 20 años después, presidente. Usted no es nada. Y lo que me falta, por usted también ha luchado como no tiene idea.
With a new constitution passed by referendum in 1999, Chavez now saw it as his role to make the Venezuelan public aware of their rights.
Por allá por los años 60 comenzaron a repartir tierra y títulos, pero nada de crédito, ni de apoyo técnico. Bueno, ¿y qué pasó con los campesinos? No llegó al campesino los beneficios del petróleo y de la riqueza nacional. Pues bien, eso ahora no puede ocurrir de nuevo, y ese es uno de los principios que están contenidos en la Constitución revolucionaria y bolivariana. Pero para eso hace falta la organización popular.
Estos muchachos es el equipo nuestro que anda con el presidente. Ya esto me lo llevo yo.
Yo le mandé un poco de estos votos y una carta y no se la he entregado.
Hablando conmigo es como si estuviera hablando con él.
Haga favor y la lea en silencio hoy para ver si está bien.
¿Y qué pasó, mi reina?
Bueno, yo pasó que yo quiero hablar con él personalmente, porque yo hablando con él me entiende.
¿La dirección está completa aquí?
No.
Dime la dirección.
4 esquinas. Yo vivo en Las Malvinas.
Barrio Las Malvinas.
Barrio Las Malvinas.
As part of his proclaimed mission to educate and his promise to make government more accessible, Chavez held a weekly radio and TV show where any citizen could phone in and talk directly to the president.
Presidente. Sí, tenemos en línea a Lucrecia Jaimes, desde Los Teques. Adelante, Lucrecia, el presidente te escucha.
¿Aló? ¿Aló?
¿Aló? Sí, aló.
Señor presidente.
Lucrecia, dime, hola.
Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente. Bueno, mi problema es el siguiente, es un problema agrario, señor presidente.
Ajá, dime.
Me interdictaron para quitarme las tierras de la parte donde yo estoy. Y quiero su ayuda.
Bueno, Lucrecia, cuenta.
También allí hay unas tierras que nosotros queremos, señor presidente, donárselas a usted para que se hagan beneficios para la comunidad.
Mira, Lucrecia, bueno, muchas gracias por tu intención y que forma parte del espíritu de solidaridad que se está despertando por todo el país.
There were other reasons for Chavez's appeal. He was non-white and hadn't emerged from the traditional political ruling classes. As a young army officer, he had led a coup in 1992 against the government of the day. He failed and went to prison, but it turned him into a popular hero. 2 years into his presidency, Chavez still faced powerful enemies amongst those who had traditionally governed the country and who still wielded considerable economic power. Although Chavez's hands-on approach came naturally to him, it was also a crucial method for strengthening his support, both inside and outside the presidential palace. With his army background, Chavez understood instinctively how to gain the loyalty of his troops.
Presidente de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, atención presente.
Sí, son bastante, le dan muchos papelitos. Me llama mucho la atención. Todo esto es de la visita que hizo el señor presidente a la parroquia del Valle.
Todo eso se procesa. Eso para nosotros eso es una carta, independientemente del tamaño de la carta. O sea, llegan a diario entre 200 y 300 cartas.
Deseo un empleo y me gustaría trabajar en una escuela pública. Que Dios lo bendiga, presidente. Pido por favor que me ayude a unos bloques de arena, cemento, vigas, cabillas, que quiere arreglar su casa.
Nuestras metas es que esta dulcería de Yalí se extienda con el mercado de los dulces.
Esos son microcréditos ya. Sí. Páralo un segundo ahí para hacer un comentario, fíjate. Y esto es válido para todos. Yo me he puesto a hacer una encuesta de ustedes que viajan para el interior y les pregunto, mire, ¿cuántos programas fuiste? No, que pasé 2 días por allá. ¿Fuiste a la televisión? ¿Fuiste a la radio? ¿Decía algo? ¿Convocaste una ruedita de prensa con los 4 periódicos de allá, bien planificada? ¿Repartiste materiales a los periodistas? Es un problema gravísimo de la revolución. No comunicamos, no sabemos comunicar. ¿Ah? Los logros. Sí, los logros, los planes que están en marcha, incentivar a la comunidad, llamarlos a cooperar y mostrar resultados tangibles, porque lo que todos los días aparece por la prensa es, bueno, que el país se está hundiendo, que aquí no hay gobierno, y manden a alguien adelante, que coordinen, que ustedes llegando, voy para la radio de una vez. Aquí llegó el gobierno revolucionario, la revolución bolivariana, y en la mañana se paran temprano. Televisión local. Eso neutraliza la gran campaña de los grandes medios.
Nuestro presidente está embelesado en una forma sexual tipo freudiana con el señor Fidel Castro. Si no hay un embeleso.
Y dirigentes de Acción Democrática introdujeron ante el Tribunal Supremo de Justicia una declaratoria de insanía mental del presidente de la República, Teniente Coronel Hugo Chávez Frías.
Va llegando el momento en que todos hablemos de la transición, sin Chávez, por supuesto. Hasta el próximo jueves.
In the past, Venezuelan governments had imposed heavy censorship on the media. But under Chavez, there was now total freedom of expression. Despite this, Chavez faced an almost daily battle with the private media, which attracts the lion's share of the TV audience. There are 5 private TV channels controlled by some of the most powerful economic interests in the country. In this media battle, Chavez used the only platform available to him, the state-owned TV, Channel 8. Like all battles, it was one that he seemed to relish.
Esta es una transmisión del Ministerio de la Secretaría de la Presidencia de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, conjuntamente con la Red Nacional de Radio y Televisión.
Nosotros apoyamos la lucha contra el terrorismo, pero no se entienda esto como una carta blanca para que se haga cualquier cosa, y nosotros seguimos pidiendo hoy todavía, después de 1 mes y medio, casi 2 meses, Dios mío, por la paz, que se busquen soluciones al problema del terrorismo, sí, que se busque a los terroristas, pero así no. Así no. Miren estos niños. Estos niños estaban vivos ayer. Estos niños estaban comiendo con su padre y les cayó una bomba. Una bomba de las que están lanzando sobre Afganistán. Esto no puede ser. No se puede decir que fue un error. Porque es un error y van a seguir cometiendo errores. Pedimos que se piense y que se rectifique a tiempo. Clamamos por eso. Lo vuelvo a repetir. Después de más de 1 mes. Aquí lo dije. No se puede responder al terror con más terror.
Desde Washington, el secretario de Estado norteamericano, Colin Powell, expresó su preocupación por ciertas acciones del presidente de Venezuela.
We have been concerned with some of the actions of Venezuelan President Chavez and his understanding of what a democratic system is all about.
For the United States, Venezuela had always been a reliable and affordable source of oil. Chavez, by deciding to exercise greater control over the state oil company and to push up oil prices, had set himself on a collision course with Washington.
President Chavez is consorting with narco-terrorists in Colombia.
Yo tenía un recuerdo de la infancia que era terrible para mí. Estaban peleando mi abuela y mi mamá. O sea, a mi mamá le estaban
CPRmetro.org.
Es que tú eres así porque tú estás enrasada de ese asesino que era tu abuelo, era tu abuelo, era un asesino. Y una vez llegó al pueblo no sé qué y bueno, y mató a todos. Los mandó a matar a todos y les cortaban la cabeza con un machete. Ese abuelo tuyo era un asesino, por eso es que tú eres así, de alzada. Entonces yo, oye, un abuelo asesino. Entonces a mí me entra como una angustia del abuelo. Y yo me fui a buscar al abuelo. Una vez en Ospino, donde él nació, donde creció y donde mató a un hombre, mató a un coronel, porque, como dicen en el llano, embarrigonó a Petra. Él embarrigonó a Petra. Y no respondió por la barriga. Había muerto el coronel Pedro Pérez Pérez. Y el muchacho de 16 años lo mató al coronel para salvar la honra de la familia. Y se fue huyendo. Eso fue en 1890 por ahí. 90 y tanto. Y huyendo, entra en una revolución. Niño todavía, tenía 17 años, 18 años. Eran revolucionarios que se fueron a los montes a caballo con lanzas y machetes a pelear por una república, por el sueño de aquel Bolívar que estaba pendiente todavía. Ese era mi abuelo. Va a la guerrilla revolucionaria. Con el cogollo, la manta. Cobija con pelo de guama. Pelo de guama, un sombrero. 45. Y canana. Nube de tabaco y nube. Relincho y susto de garza. Madrugadita de leche bajo la noche ordeñada. La lluvia. Llanero alzao. Canto, silencio y canto. El guerrillero va adelante cantando. Rumbo de asombros, los 40 caballos. Así que yo conseguí esa huella en el tiempo y en el espacio. Y eso me dio mucha energía. Me dio mucha energía. Me da mucha energía, ¿no? Y además, bueno, ya estoy seguro que no fue un asesino. Como decía mi bisabuela, que en paz descanse, Marta Fría. Claro que lo decía porque estaba confundida, ¿no? Era lo que decía la gente. Lo que decían algunos, que era un asesino. Era un guerrero, pues. Era un guerrero.
Las cadenas de vil esclavitud, oligarcas temblar, viva la libertad, oligarcas temblar, viva la libertad, hasta la victoria siempre, llegada la unidad.
Although Venezuela was witnessing an explosion of grassroots political activity, both amongst those for and against Chavez, this phenomenon was in its infancy and lacked focus. For this reason, Chavez supporters in the hills around Caracas had begun organizing themselves into small neighborhood groups, Bolivarian circles, which focused on community issues and popular education.
Yo nunca en la vida había votado. Cuando el presidente Chávez salió a la luz, abrió nuevas expectativas. Entonces nosotros decidimos, bueno, vamos a votar por él.
La política para nosotros era que un grupo se hacía rico mientras el otro grupo pasaba hambre y por eso no llegaban los recursos. Pero ahora sí queremos saber de la política porque nos interesa muchísimo la política, porque la política que estamos viviendo ahorita es democrática y participativa. Gracias a ese señor que nos dijo, primero hay que leer. Hay que saber lo que se está leyendo. Me explicaron qué es la Constitución.
Improvisando, estamos improvisados. Aquí en el negocio, todas estas cosas, pues estamos enseñando también a que aprendan a leer la Constitución, a cómo se lee la Constitución, pues cómo se analiza la Constitución.
con los otros gobiernos que teníamos anteriormente, a Dey y Copey, eso, le cerraban la puerta a uno para hablar con ellos. No podía uno hablar porque decían, no podemos, estamos ocupados, estamos en cámara. Era cámara para ellos, pero no era para la pobreza.
Que primera vez en Venezuela tenemos un gobierno que es democrático, un gobierno que nos hace participar, un gobierno que es del pueblo.
On the prosperous side of town, other views on Chávez's democracy could be heard.
El pueblo no sabe lo que es el sacrificio ni lo que es adquirir las cosas y por eso no le da importancia ni le da valor. Nosotros no vamos a abandonar nuestro país, que es el objetivo de estas personas que quieren que nosotros nos vayamos de aquí y le dejemos este país a gente que no tiene preparación, a gente que no tiene valores y que no ha luchado por obtener cosas. Mientras que nosotros somos personas que hemos luchado por lo que tenemos y no se lo vamos a dejar tan fácilmente.
No había miedo, todo el mundo era feliz, se trabajaba, se divertía, se vivía, en una palabra.
Para mí una revolución trasnochada, porque eso no es ninguna revolución, y con esa excusa quiere hacer un proyecto continental de comunismo y totalitarismo en toda Latinoamérica y no lo va a lograr.
Es importante que ustedes evalúen un poquito los servicios domésticos. Nosotros no tenemos muchísima evidencia de cantidades de domésticas que están ya involucradas con los círculos bolivarianos. De alguna forma pasan información. Esto es delicado. Y esto es una de las primeras cosas que uno le enseña cuando maneja armamento. El dedo nunca está en el gatillo y el arma nunca está apuntando a nadie. O sea, es muy delicado, pero hay que estar pendiente que si esa gente viene para acá, no va a venir a jugar y no va a venir a tirarnos piedras. Y vienen algunos con granadas.
El pueblo está cansado de pura falacia, Chávez. No queremos dictadura, vete para Cuba, Chávez. El pueblo está cansado y el pueblo no puede contigo. ¿Qué tanto, Chávez? Por favor, no tienes ojos para ver, no tienes oído para oír.
A small minority of Venezuelans had benefited in the past from the country's vast oil wealth. In Venezuela, the oil belongs to the state, but for decades the state oil company had been run like a private corporation by the traditional ruling class. Chávez's promise to redistribute the oil revenue to the remaining 80% who lived in poverty required breaking their control over the state oil company.
Porque el gobierno revolucionario lo que está es distribuyendo la riqueza entre todos para que todos vivamos mejor, porque la riqueza de Venezuela es de todos, no de una minoría.
In February 2002, Chávez announced his plan to shake up the state oil company and to put his own people on the management board. The war had begun.
¿Usted cree que el presidente de la República está loco?
El chavismo se apoya crecientemente en la violencia a medida que va perdiendo poder de convocatoria y popularidad. Se parecen a las fuerzas de choque que empleaban Mussolini y Hitler.
The privately owned media began calling on Venezuelans to demonstrate, suggesting that Chávez's attempts to control the oil industry were a direct attack on their prosperity.
He wants us to become a Cuba. He wants this to become a communist. There is no doubt about it.
At the head of the opposition to Chávez were two key figures: Pedro Carmona, president of Venezuela's largest business federation, and Carlos Ortega, head of CTV, a trade union with strong ties to the old political system. Both men traveled to Washington to meet with high-ranking members of the Bush administration and to discuss President Chávez.
Por segundo día consecutivo, altos funcionarios del gobierno de Washington expresaron su preocupación por la situación política en el país.
El director de la CIA, George Tenet, confesó estar especialmente preocupado por nuestro país.
Obviously, Venezuela is important because they're the third largest supplier of petroleum. I would say that Mr. Chávez, and the State Department may say this, probably doesn't have the interests of the United States at heart.
I'm sure that all of us are going to be watching very closely to see what goes on in Venezuela and with President Chávez in particular.
All of a sudden, the CIA's concerns were shared by a group of high-ranking Venezuelan army generals. On April 10th, one of them appeared across all private TV channels with a message for the president.
el alto mando militar tiene que decirle al señor presidente, aquí la causa de todo esto usted, váyase. Entonces el alto mando tendrá que asumir esa posición, porque si no, alguien la va a asumir por ello. Muchas gracias, señores.
Bueno, las declaraciones del general Néstor González vienen a reconfirmar que Hugo Chávez es agente al servicio de Fidel Castro y de la guerrilla colombiana.
That same day, Carmona called an opposition march to the headquarters of the State Oil Company.
We're apparently having a technical problem.
What the marchers didn't know was that they were to be part of a bigger plan. On the morning of April the 11th, the opposition demonstration set out on its march to the State Oil Company. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, thousands of Chavez supporters had gathered outside the presidential palace in a show of solidarity with the government. Back at the State Oil Company headquarters, the leaders of the opposition march had decided, in violation of the law, to change the route. The plan was now to get the crowd to march on the presidential palace.
Esta masa, que este río humano marcha hacia Miraflores contundentemente para sacar a este traidor. ¡Chávez, maldito! Dijiste que me iban a suspender las garantías, ¡porro!
Señor Ortega, es una irresponsabilidad que usted esté convocando frente a Miraflores cuando usted sabe que hay miles de personas concentradas en Miraflores. No busque usted una confrontación. Nosotros no vamos a caer en provocaciones, pero usted está provocando.
We were outside the palace with the Chavez supporters when rumours reached the crowd that the opposition march was on its way, and the mood turned defiant.
Aquí tenemos una conspiración, pero esa conspiración es del imperialismo norteamericano. Hay todo un programa de la CIA.
Lo peor de todo son los medios de comunicación que se han prestado para toda esta campaña de la guerra sucia que están haciendo.
The opposition march was fast approaching, and some in the vanguard seemed ready for a fight. With thousands of Chavez supporters still surrounding the palace, a confrontation seemed imminent. Then at about 2 p.m, we saw the opposition march arrive. The army tried to act as a buffer between the two groups. We moved back into the heart of the Chavez crowd when all of a sudden firing started. We couldn't tell where the shots were coming from, but people were being hit in the head. Soon it became clear that we were being shot at by snipers. 1 in 4 Venezuelans carry handguns, and soon some of the Chavez supporters began to shoot back in the direction the sniper fire seemed to be coming from.
La cámara que estaba en este edificio perpendicular a Miraflores, esa era una cámara de Venevisión, y ellos capturan las imágenes cuando desde el puente disparan. Ahora, no sabemos realmente, presumimos que dispara contra la manifestación, pero no vemos. Ahora, sí se ve que esa gente que está en el puente se está agachando, se está cubriendo presumiblemente de disparos que les está llegando. Ahora, nosotros no hicimos ningún esfuerzo por averiguar qué era lo que estaba pasando, sino que ya a priori condenamos y se manipuló y esas imágenes se repitieron una y otra y otra vez para decir que el chavismo había asesinado o era el principal culpable de la masacre de Caracas.
Ahorita presten atención. Miren, la franela del MBR, este señor del chaleco negro, cómo dispara, cómo vacía la pistola. La franela del MBR, este señor ha disparado contra los manifestantes que venían en forma pacífica, absolutamente desarmados.
What the TV stations didn't broadcast was this camera angle, which clearly shows that the streets below were empty. The opposition march had never taken that route. With this manipulation, the deaths could now be blamed on Chavez.
Lo importante es que ahora el presidente de la República asuma la responsabilidad ante el país de renunciar y de facilitarle al país que la transición se produzca con el menor costo.
Coroneles, oficiales, suboficiales profesionales de carrera, tropas profesionales, tropas alistadas. Ustedes están en los cuarteles y por conocer la Fuerza Armada, están viendo la televisión para saber qué hacer. Aprovechen este mensaje, piensen y tomen la decisión correcta.
Hemos decidido dirigirnos al pueblo venezolano para desconocer el actual régimen de gobierno y la autoridad de Hugo Rafael Chávez Frías.
Control. Back in the palace there was total confusion. Nobody seemed to know what was happening or what information to believe. Chavez was locked in a meeting with his ministers in the presidential office as they tried to establish what was happening in the rest of the country.
Hola, Ramón. Llegó la información de que ya los ecuánidos prácticamente cerraron el canal 8, y que no pueden entrar técnicos de nada y no ha llegado el apoyo de la Guardia Nacional todavía. ¿Cómo haríamos para averiguar si eso es cierto, Ramón, para yo informarlo aquí?
Es información que no está confirmada. Dicen que un comando, de todos los comandos, un comando de la Guardia desafecta al gobierno, intentó tomar el canal 8 o la tomó, no sé.
Although rumours were flying that Channel 8, the state TV station, had been sabotaged, at around 9 p.m. the ministers were able to broadcast live from the palace through the channel's mobile unit.
Este momento, balance de la situación, como el país lo está escuchando a través de Venezolana de Televisión. Mira, venga. Pablo, Carlos, pendiente. Gracias. Da la hora.
Estamos en el Palacio de Miraflores, estamos transmitiendo en vivo. La hora? 9:20. 9:20 de la noche.
Oficiales que pueden estar confundidos por este tipo de información de bandidos de la información. Fueron ellos los que nos masacraron a nosotros.
At 9:30, the signal was cut. We now found ourselves with a small group of Chavez's ministers, cut off from the outside world. Our only source of information, the private TV stations.
¿Qué informes tienen de las distintas guarniciones del país?
Bueno, mire, todo está controlado. Lo único que nos queda es el pequeño reducto
que, como es obvio, tiene que brindarle seguridad al señor presidente de la República en Miraflores, y nosotros no queremos, por supuesto, ningún derramamiento de sangre entre hermanos de la Fuerza Armada.
We could see on TV that the palace had been surrounded by tanks.
A pedirles nuevamente al grupo de personas que están protegiendo al presidente de la República para que no opongan ninguna resistencia. Vamos a hacer una entrega pacífica, una transición pacífica. Ya todo el país, todas las guarniciones están plegadas a esta acción que han tomado las Fuerzas Armadas Nacionales.
At around 10 p.m., members of the military high command arrived in the palace to demand Chávez's resignation. They would not let us enter the room. Sometime later, the First Minister arrived out from the President's office. Chávez was refusing to sign a resignation, and in response, the generals were threatening to bomb the palace.
El juego se terminó. Esta es la victoria de la muerte.
La CIA está detrás de todo esto, no, todo el mundo lo sabe. Nosotros veníamos diciendo, tenemos documentos, con 19 pasos de un golpe de Estado.
Los adversarios eran muy poderosos y no tuvimos tiempo de medio de comunicación, no organizamos una política comunicacional.
La historia no lo pueden destruir.
By this point, most civilians had been evacuated. Those that remained knew that if the palace was bombed, there would be no way out.
Eso ya, que tú verás mañana algo de sangre en Caracas.
Eso no es lamentable.
La gente no se la va a calar, jamás se la va a calar.
At about 3:30 a.m., one of the ministers came out to talk to us. Chávez had decided to hand himself over to the generals to avoid the bombing of the palace, but he was still refusing to resign as president.
Sí, porque políticamente que quede en evidencia que esto fue un golpe de Estado. No es que él renunció, pues el presidente no renunció.
Okay.
No renunció y entonces va preso, porque es un golpe de Estado.
¿Qué? Que lo sepa el mundo.
Que lo sepa el mundo.
Sin saludarlo, les agradecemos, porque se necesitamos estar rápido.
La situación está crítica, déjalo que se vaya.
With 5 minutes left till the bombing deadline expired, Chávez was led away.
Presidente, volveremos, no joda. Esta vaina es la final.
Que no nos hemos ido.
Así es, allá los carros.
El pueblo está con el presidente y lo va a venir a apoyar, y tú vas a ver.
Se ha decidido que la Fuerza Armada
mantenga en custodia al presidente saliente, al presidente Chávez, y que se conforme entonces en lo inmediato un gobierno de transición.
One hour later, Venezuela awoke to a new regime and to an extraordinary TV moment in which all was revealed.
Buenos días, tenemos nuevo presidente. Debo decirlo, gracias Venevisión, gracias RCTV.
Yo voy a decir una cosa, y nosotros tenemos que decir, tanto Venevisión como RCTV, gracias Televen, gracias CMT, gracias Globovisión.
Gracias medios de comunicación.
¿Qué sucedió antes de eso?
El pronunciamiento del general González a través de los medios de comunicación, y podemos decir lo que fue desde tu casa.
No, tú estabas en mi casa, perdona, porque me fuiste a llevar una foto de información que yo saqué aquí mismo. Pero estás claro, tú metido en nada, yo soy periodista.
Sí, hicimos un video desde la casa de Napoleón. Cuando nosotros decidimos que el general Néstor González saliera a la luz pública, era porque Chávez se iba a Costa Rica. Y nosotros teníamos que tener a Chávez en Venezuela. Y entonces ese pronunciamiento del general González hace que Chávez no vaya a Costa Rica, se queda en Venezuela, y ahí es cuando nosotros activamos el plan definitivo.
¿Cuál era el plan?
El plan original era, previo apoyo masivo de la sociedad civil, al llegar al punto máximo de ese apoyo de la sociedad democrática en general, pasar al empleo de la Fuerza Armada.
The palace we had fled only hours before was now the scene of celebrations and backslapping by the coup leaders and their cronies.
El nuevo gobierno de Venezuela no es un gobierno militar. La Fuerza Armada se adhirió al nuevo gobierno que ha nacido limpiamente de los ciudadanos venezolanos.
As the coup generals made themselves at home in the presidential office, the palace guard in their red berets, who yesterday had served Chavez, were now reluctantly at the orders of Carmona.
Yo creo que el presidente Hugo Chávez tiene que ser juzgado conforme a las leyes de la República y a las leyes internacionales, no solamente por la violación de los derechos humanos, de la conculcación de los derechos de la libertad de expresión.
Yo, Pedro Carmona Estanga, en mi condición de presidente de la República de Venezuela, juro ante Dios Todopoderoso, ante la patria y ante todos los venezolanos, restablecer la justicia, la igualdad, la solidaridad y la responsabilidad social.
¡Te queremos, Pedro!
Decretamos constituir un gobierno de transición democrática y unidad nacional de la siguiente forma y bajo los siguientes lineamientos. Se suspende de sus cargos a los diputados principales y suplentes a la Asamblea Nacional. Se destituyen de sus cargos al presidente y demás magistrados del Tribunal Supremo de Justicia, así como al fiscal general de la República, al Contralor General de la República, al Defensor del Pueblo y a los miembros del Consejo Nacional Electoral.
Producto de este amplio mandato que recibiéramos del bravo pueblo venezolano, que constituyó más que un referéndum, asumimos pues con un sentido claro de confianza y de apoyo de todos los sectores de la sociedad este compromiso.
Que aquí hay una dictadura, eso es lo que está pasando, que aquí no queremos dictadura, aquí queremos democracia, más nada.
¿Qué voy a hacer yo con mi voto? Yo voté por Chávez y yo quiero que Chávez termine su mandato, porque si esto es democracia, debe dársele respeto a las leyes.
quiero además invocar la comprensión de la comunidad internacional de que este es un proceso de profundas raíces democráticas para que nos ayuden.
En 3 años que gobernó el presidente Chávez, nunca nos reprimieron como ahora. Mira para allá. Soy chavista y yo lo sangro por él. Soy chavista, no me pare. Aquí no queremos ningún coño humano, aquí queremos a Chávez. Queremos a Chávez.
El país se encamina rápidamente hacia una recuperación de su normalidad institucional.
Let me share with you the administration's thoughts about what's taking place in Venezuela. We know that the action encouraged by the Chavez government provoked this crisis. The Chavez government suppressed peaceful demonstrations, fired on unarmed, peaceful protesters, resulting in 10 killed and 100 wounded. That is what took place, and a transitional civilian government has been installed.
Ahora, amigos, nuestro compañero Pedro Guerrero nos tiene información desde las afueras de la Embajada de Cuba, aquí en Caracas.
¡Ni un paso atrás! ¡Ni un paso atrás! Miren, señores, los que están ahí adentro, Diosdado Cabello y su combo, ustedes se van a tener que comer las alfombras, se van a tener que comer las sillas y las mesas que están ahí adentro, porque no les va a entrar comida, no les va a entrar agua. Les vamos a cortar la luz después que vean esta transmisión.
Se están tratando de cortar estos cables para dejar sin luz la Embajada de Cuba.
La censura se implantó desde el viernes en la mañana, cuando se nos dice por primera vez que no estaba permitido que apareciera en pantalla de ese momento en adelante ningún personero del chavismo. Cero chavismo.
Exministro del Interior y Justicia, están esposando al exministro del Interior y Justicia, capitán de navío Ramón Rodríguez Chacín, el hombre que hasta ayer...
Y me dicen, esta es la línea, yo tengo la línea directamente con el dueño del canal, y acatas la línea o te vas. Me parecía antiético, y así se lo dije, o sea, eso va contra mis principios, y yo inmediatamente renuncié.
Vimos toda la información por aquí, es completamente normal, la gente está al parecer durmiendo y todo está muy tranquilo.
Despite the blackout by the Venezuelan private media, members of Chavez's government had managed to communicate with international television networks, getting the message back to Venezuela via cable TV that Chavez had not resigned and was being held captive. Very quickly the word began to spread.
Venezolanos que salgan a la calle, no nos tapemos los ojos, no se escondan, este es el barrio, esta es la ciudad, somos todos.
Chávez no ha renunciado. El único argumento con el que lo pueden sacar a él de la presidencia es con un referéndum, eso está marcado en la Constitución Nacional.
Él no ha renunciado, lo tienen secuestrado. Él no ha renunciado, lo tienen secuestrado.
Chavez had not been seen or heard of since he'd been taken away 2 days earlier. That morning, as we drove around Caracas, the atmosphere was electric. Despite police repression, people had decided to march on the palace.
Grandes cambios en la vida nacional venezolana, en menos de 24 horas un nuevo líder, un nuevo régimen y nuevas políticas. El recién instalado mandatario interino de Venezuela, Pedro Carmona, dice que inaugurará una nueva era para el país. El nuevo régimen venezolano se apresta ahora a desmantelar algunas de las políticas de la República Bolivariana de Hugo Chávez.
Queremos a Chávez, no queremos otra dictadura.
Ayer emitieron a Venezuela, eso fue lo que pasó ayer. Nos demostraron lo que aquí está pasando hoy. Nos violaron nuestra constitución.
With so many people out on the streets, the palace guard who had remained loyal to Chavez decided to act. Behind Carmona's back, a plot was being hatched by Chavez's men to retake the palace. The plan was for the guard to take up key positions, surround the palace, and to wait for a given signal. With all their positions secured, the signal was given, and the Presidential Guard moved in. Several members of the newly installed government were taken prisoner, but in the confusion, Carmona and the generals had managed to slip away.
La caja fuerte la vacía.
As the guards secured the building, Chavez's ministers, who had been in hiding for the last 2 days, began to arrive back to the palace to try and re-establish the legitimate cabinet.
Estamos esperando, nosotros no vamos a negociar, nosotros estamos esperando al presidente Chávez aquí y el presidente Chávez va a ser el que va a tomar las decisiones. Es el único presidente que tiene Venezuela en este momento. William Lara, ¿qué se dice? Pásalo para acá.
Los ministros y los periodistas, por favor.
Miren, los oficiales, pongan guardia aquí en la puerta, por favor.
Mucha gente aquí para...
Caballero. Pasé a la clandestinidad. Estaba en la clandestinidad ya, pero volví otra vez a la legalidad.
Qué bueno.
María. Señores, voy a dirigir el Consejo de Ministros. Siéntese, por favor. Todos son ministros. Todos son ministros, siéntese. Vamos a hacer un Consejo de Ministros Popular. Héctor.
No hay un gobierno provisorio, el presidente es Chávez. Ellos no lo aceptan, no lo han declarado todavía. Y el presidente está detenido, nadie lo ha visto. Lo tienen allá, llegaron unos sacerdotes, entraron, pero hay una informaciones vagas. a la gente que está allá en Orchila. No está claro la situación del presidente.
¿De los periodistas harían
Hay un oficial que estuvo con él hoy, que lo vio, un oficial de la Marina.
Aquí más chiquito, ¿vale? Pero tranca la puerta, Nelisa. Que hay indisciplina, ¿vale? Señores, estamos perdiendo el tiempo y eso es lo que nos ha llevado a nosotros, no hay disciplina.
Todos los periodistas quieren un minuto.
Señores periodistas, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Ya ustedes saben que volvimos a tomar poder, pero hay que defenderlo con actividad y eficiencia. Entonces, actividad y eficiencia obliga a organización. Van a coordinar su actividad con una persona. ¿De acuerdo? Cosa que pase tú. ¿Puedes hacerlo tú?
Le explico un momentico. Yo estoy aquí desde que usted llegara aquí hace rato. Yo estoy desde muy temprano aquí.
¿Cómo?
Pero cuando usted dice coordinar no entiendo.
Bueno, hazlo tú, pues. No importa, es alguna persona. No, es que no podemos estar así, hermano. Si no hacemos una rueda de prensa y lo organizamos, ustedes nos esperan afuera.
Pero ¿cómo así? Yo estaba tranquilo esperando.
Hermano, porque no se puede estar... Esto es un desorden. No es así.
O sea, no se puede hablar, no se puede hablar. No es porque es insoportable.
Sí, es que nos coordina entonces, pero ahí sabe un poquito cómo se manejan los medios.
The palace was now in the hands of Chávez's government, but the private media were refusing to announce the news. It was absolutely crucial to get Channel 8, the state TV, back on air, so that the rest of the country could know what was happening.
Tenemos gente en el 8 tenemos rodeado de gente. Y está una vaina militar adentro, yo le echo bola ahí con uno. Tenemos un problema, tenemos el problema técnico del 8. Hay que llamar a esta muchachita técnico. Si agarramos el 8, resolvemos el problema.
By this stage, tens of thousands were gathering outside the palace. Back inside, a group of Chávez's ministers and the Attorney General were on their way to address the prisoners in the basement. Amongst them was the man who yesterday, as Carmona's Attorney General, had dissolved the constitutional government.
Micrófono. Vamos, cuando quiera, doctor. En mi carácter de fiscal del Ministerio Público, estamos en este momento notificándole formalmente que el Ministerio Público les garantiza a ustedes, con la representación de la Defensoría del Pueblo, los derechos que ustedes tienen como ciudadanos.
Señor Carmona, ¿dónde se encuentra usted en estos momentos y cuál es la situación en el Palacio de Miraflores? Como usted bien sabe, se han presentado algunas manifestaciones en respaldo a Chávez en el día de hoy. ¿Qué opina usted al respecto?
Pues mire, aun cuando ha habido algunos focos, el control es ya total. El país se encuentra en un estado de normalidad y de control.
Le explico y le agradezco la oportunidad para desmentir la mentira que está propalando el ciudadano Pedro Carmona Estanga, quien acaba de decir en CNN que él tiene control del Palacio de Miraflores aquí en Caracas. Yo soy William Lara, presidente de la Asamblea Nacional, y le estoy hablando desde las oficinas del Palacio de Miraflores, el Palacio de Gobierno ubicado en la capital de Venezuela, Caracas.
A ver, Darío, le escucha William Lara, presidente de la Asamblea Nacional.
Yo se lo aguanto.
Acá estamos.
Darío Arismendi, salúdelo.
Darío Arismendi, ¿cómo estás, colega? Te habla William Lara, periodista venezolano, presidente de la Asamblea Nacional de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Estamos en el Palacio de Miraflores. El artículo 234 del texto constitucional venezolano establece que las faltas temporales del jefe del Estado son suplidas de manera automática por el vicepresidente de la República.
It was absolutely crucial that somebody filled the power vacuum. And in the absence of Chávez, the vice president was next in line. But he had been kept in hiding, and Chávez's men now went out to escort him back. Although the palace had been taken, the military high command were still in control. Their next move would determine the fate of those in and outside the palace.
Y ya aquí en Miraflores se cuentan más de 1,5 millones de personas. Hay que verle la cara a eso. Cuidado con que las Fuerzas Armadas salgan ahora a matar al pueblo. Todos los canales están rodeados. Coño, mira, Riaza, tienen ustedes que tener un control. Yo le agradezco, dile a Vázquez Velázquez que me llame. Yo quiero hablar con él, pues yo creo que ahorita lo que impera es que nuevamente, compañeros, aquí volvamos a su punto original y que entonces el presidente decida en un momento determinado qué es lo que se puede hacer. El presidente Chávez. Bueno. Está bien, porque así lo va llenando la angustia.
Mira, consejo de ministro para la organización de verdad. La señal, ya estamos al aire con la señal. Estamos saliendo con una cámara y un micrófono. Ahora sí nos enterramos.
Muy buenas noches, queridos televidentes. Estamos aquí transmitiendo en vivo a través de Venezolana de Televisión, diciéndole claramente al pueblo que se ha restituido el orden constitucional y que en este momento los ministros están preparando un control.
A los comandantes de las Fuerzas Armadas se le pide que exista, por favor, recapacitación para que nuestro pueblo siga manteniendo la confianza en todo su ejército, en toda su fuerza. El gobierno existente en Venezuela lo rige el señor presidente de la República, Hugo Rafael Chávez Frías.
Ever since Channel 8's signal had been restored, messages of support had begun pouring in from military barracks around the country, where lower-ranking troops and officers realised for the first time that they'd been lied to by the High Command. From the island where Chavez was being held, loyal soldiers rang to say that an American-registered plane had landed there.
El control maquetía, el ATC debe tener de quién es este avión y si es verdad que hay un avión con esta matrícula aquí.
El problema es el avión. Lo quieren sacar en el avión. Lo quieren sacar en un avión. Sácalo del país. Sácalo del país.
Then news came in that the vice president had been found. It was now urgent to swear him in and to restore constitutionality.
Hay uno que juramentaron como procurador, que le estaba comentando como Lina Tamayo.
Ahí está abajo. Ahí está abajo.
Ajá.
Eso se llama...
Temprano, que no hay salida supuestamente cuando ellos están en euforia, porque ya el vicepresidente no puede ser juramentado por nadie porque está ilegitimado. No. Pero entonces al usted juramentar...
No. Y en el supuesto de que el vicepresidente no esté, está el William Lara, que es el presidente de la mesa. Una persona no puede derogar la Constitución del 91. Más aún cuando la Asamblea tiene un origen soberano. Es votación popular.
Hasta ahora, Molina Tamayo pensaba que yo estaba leal, le sacaron más información. Quieren sacar jefe ahorita en la noche en avión. Estamos tratando de conseguir un avión de la Fuerza Aérea. ¿Pero sacarlo para dónde? A una isla del Caribe, ya me confirmaron que es dominicana, pero no tienen el opción.
¿Pero quién lo quiere sacar ellos?
Molina Tamayo, sí.
Okay. Eso lo hace después. Vamos a juramentarlo ya.
Cuando ellos digan y que me garantice eso, estamos al aire. En atención a la falta temporal del presidente constitucional de Venezuela, ¿puede usted cumplir y hacer cumplir la Constitución y leyes de la República como presidente temporal de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela? Sí, lo juro. Si así lo hace, que Dios, la patria y el pueblo soberano se lo premie, de lo contrario que se lo demande. Perdón, la inspectoría. Okay.
The new president of Venezuela now called an emergency meeting in the presidential office.
El asunto de la temporalidad de la ausencia. Sí. Está cerrado. ¿Y quién tiene llave aquí? Pues? El presidente Hugo Chávez lo tienen detenido en algún lugar de Venezuela, no sabemos exactamente. Esperamos pues que la institucionalidad se recupera a partir de mi juramentación como vicepresidente provisional, tal como establece, como presidente provisional, tal como establece la Constitución. Ahora, lo que pedimos es quienes tienen al presidente de la República la garantía, el presidente Chávez, la garantía de su vida, la garantía de su estabilidad. Los fregados son hay promoca ahí una investigación de bola que
seguridad tranquilo.
The newly sworn-in president gave immediate orders for 3 commando units to fly out and get Chavez back.
Ok, ahora vamos a organizarnos, por favor, los oficiales acá, vamos a distribuirnos el personal. Los oficiales acá, por favor.
Atención, Isaías, Julio, lo importante.
Por favor, oigan, el control militar lo tenemos en este momento en nuestra mano, sin la información de general.
La Fuerza Armada está con enemigo constitucional. Estamos esperando que llegue el presidente Chávez.
Mira, me muestra el video de cuando estábamos saliendo ahí, ¿oíste? Yo no te dije nada porque yo dije, no, ya volvemos.
Escribieron historia.
No tenemos sistema de audio, por lo tanto necesitamos silencio absoluto para que el presidente se pueda dirigir a la nación.
¿Qué pasó? ¿Fue que se lo llevaron?
Se llevaron unas cuantas cosas.
Empavaron esto, empavaron. Quiero hacer un llamado, y esto quizás es lo más importante que yo quiero decir hoy. Hoy es domingo ya.
Ya.
Sí, domingo, ¿qué fecha? 14 de abril. Yo pues he estado incomunicado en las últimas horas y no tenía ninguna información, tenía una angustia muy grande. Y lo primero y más importante que digo a todos los venezolanos es que vuelvan a sus casas, que vuelva la calma. Ustedes venezolanas, ustedes venezolanos que me adversan, pues advérsenme. Yo no puedo, trataré de hacerlos cambiar, ojalá. Pero ustedes no pueden adversar esta Constitución, porque esto es un libro para todos. Es como el Popol Vuh, aquel libro de los mayas. El Popol Vuh, el libro de todos, el libro de la comunidad. Tienen que reconocer todo esto y sobre todo algo. Oye, no se dejen envenenar. No permitan que los envenenen con tantas cosas y tantas mentiras.
Cuidado en el barrio, cuidado en la acera, cuidado donde sea, que te andan buscando. Seguridad, cuidado en el campo, cuidado en la frontera, cuidado donde sea.
Pongo por delante de nosotros al comandante de todos los comandantes, al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo y su mensaje liberador, al Cristo y su mensaje de amor, de la justicia social. Y los llamo a todos. Los que quieran patria, vengan conmigo para que sigamos haciendo patria.
United Nations officials have paid tribute to the late president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, who passed away on Tuesday. The 58-year-old leader returned to his country last month after cancer treatment in Cuba. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had just briefed the Security Council late on Tuesday when he was asked about the death of President Chavez.
As a president of Venezuela, he has been making his own contributions to his own country's development. At the same time, as a Secretary General, while I will be able to issue a more formal statement, I'd like to convey my deepest condolence to the families and people and government of Venezuela on the loss of President Chavez.
Ambassador Vitaly Churkin of Russia, the president of the Security Council for March, described the death of President Chavez as a tragedy.
He was, I think, a great politician for his country, for Latin America, and for the world. And of course, he played a very important role in the development of relations between Venezuela and Russia. So we feel very badly about it.
The late president of Venezuela had addressed the United Nations General Assembly on several occasions. Jerry Adams, United Nations.
Stephen Zunis, a professor of politics and international studies at the University of San Francisco, thinks Chavez's presidency was significant in Venezuela's history, and it may take a lot to undermine the authority of the government that he leaves behind.
Who emerges at the top, could depend on a number of internal factors, but I think the main thing is that Venezuelan politics has been changed forever. While Venezuela, to its credit, was one of the more democratic countries in Latin America during a time when much of the hemisphere was under right-wing military dictatorships, it was very much a plutocracy where elites dominated the two major political parties. There was incredible inequality and immense poverty despite the enormous oil wealth. And Chavez, to his credit, despite some semi-authoritarian excesses, was able to empower the population, empower the poor majority, who are not going to go back to the old ways. And so whoever emerges to lead Venezuela in the coming years and decades is going to be a very, very different country that they'll be governing, thanks to Hugo Chavez.
We heard from author and historian Gerald Horne, who thinks Washington may try to take advantage from Chavez's death.
There is a joke in the Western Hemisphere that goes like this. Why has the government in the United States been so stable opposed to governments in Latin America? The answer, there is no U.S. embassy in Washington, D.C. Relations with Washington have never been good with Venezuela during the Chavez regime. Recall that approximately a decade ago, there was an attempted coup against Mr. Chavez, and there were suspicions at that time that Washington was involved. Recall also that Mr. Chavez's close ally in Cuba, led by the Castro brothers, has been an enemy of Washington for years now.
Pongo por delante de nosotros al comandante de todos los comandantes, al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo y su mensaje liberador, al Cristo y su mensaje de amor, de la justicia social. Y los llamo a todos. Los que quieran patria, vengan conmigo para que sigamos haciendo patria.
This is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world, and we are going to honor the memory of the late president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, who passed away yesterday. This is President Chavez at a press conference on September 24th, 2009. And this is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world. This is President Chavez at the UN, September 24th, 2009, at a press conference. I'm going to jump ahead of the noise at the beginning.
Okay, they told me now, that's why. So, what is it, first come, first serve? I mean, you get in. Oh, you don't know anything about it. You're the medium man. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay.
And,
oh, it's 4:34. Fine. I might as well stay. I might as well stay.
Again, these are the sounds of a press conference held at the United Nations September 24th, 2009.
after President Chavez had delivered another speech. We heard earlier the one he delivered in 2006 during the presidency of George Bush, when he spoke of the smell of sulfur from the devil, referring to Bush. And so we're getting, I'm going to see if I can't get us up to the point where the audio is actually on. Here we go. Okay, here we go. There's
the on it, beyond the political declaration.
Here we go. Again, this is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world. We are honoring the memory of the late president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, who passed away yesterday.
I've been meeting since yesterday, or since the day before yesterday. Tomorrow, the meeting begins with the foreign ministers, and then the president. 26th.
Here we go.
Fine. And besides the political declaration, besides the working plan, we have been stressing from the host country, as the chairman of the summit, we are insisting on establishing a strategic agenda and to appoint a strategic commission which would ensure that we would develop for the next 10 years a strategic map between Africa and South America. We are brother continents. People can say we're the same continent. If you turn the map around, I don't think there's a map here. We're two continents that are connected by water, by winds, by geography, and by blood. South America could not be understood without Africa, and Africa could not be understood without South America. And so there are two poles that are emerging. We have had intensive discussions recently in Algeria and Tripoli for the 40th anniversary of the Libyan Revolution with several African leaders. There are great expectations. We have a whole set of proposals, tactical and strategic proposals. Why? To bring together both continents, to unite us from an economic point of view, a political point of view, and to combine UNASUR with the African Union. We're energetic. We have great mines. We have the largest reserves of oil, gas, gold, precious minerals, but they have been exploited. They have been looted for centuries. And now, enough. We have to take control of the management of our resources. That's one of the proposals that we are making. And as a result, the idea and the proposal to set up a set of corporations, firms, state corporations, and also private corporations, but with the state setting the direction, the states, the governments, and the people with them. And so Telesur, for example, the Southern Broadcasting Station, an energy corporation in the South, a Southern Bank, which we already have in South America, and the Africans have that as well. And so it's a matter of connecting the two. Telesur already exists. We have to establish this connection with Africa. There's a whole set of proposals for a strategic agenda in 2010, from 2010 to 2020. We want this summit. We don't want it to be just another summit with speeches and photo opportunities. It has to set the path for the next 10 years. Thank you very much for your question.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Following up on your speech, when you spoke about the possibility of there being two Obamas, do you think that there could actually be a change in the foreign policy of the United States toward Latin America as this administration is presenting? And you're from where? Telesur. Thank you. Telesur.
Yo creo que
I think that one of the serious failures of the United States has been that for a long time it has underestimated and undervalued Latin America and the Caribbean. It is not only undervalued, but it has mistreated. And you may remember what that Mexican president, Mexican leader said when he said, "Poor, poor Mexico, so far from God and so close to the United States." Simón Bolívar, our father Bolívar, as early as 1825, and I repeat, in 1825, he said the following: "The United States of North America seem to be destined by Providence to plague the Americas with misery in the name of freedom." And that is what happened. I hope that Obama turns around the vision of the White House, of the Department of State of Latin America. They cannot continue to mistreat us, as Nestor Kirchner stated on a historic day, so historic, in fact, that in Oliver Stone's movie, Nestor appears, and Nestor says that day was so historic that the chair where I sat down, I've actually kept it in my house in Calafate, in the south, in Patagonia. The debate and the Battle of Mar del Plata, where we defeated the FTA, and where and that was Bush's proposal to have a free trade area. That meant death. That would have meant death to the hopes of Latin America and the Caribbean. It was perfect colonialism, the FTA. So Nestor, at a specific point, said to those who were attempting to overwhelm us, and Bush the first of them, "Don't come here to step on us." And that is a very typical phrase used in Argentina and in Venezuela as well. Just don't continue to step on us. Obama should read Juan Bosch's book. I'm going to send Juan Bosch's book to Obama. It's called Pentagonism, and he should read that book. The Pentagon is a state within the state. That is its own government. Its own government. Obama should dismantle that government. Let's see if they let him. And that is why I said, God save Obama from the bullets that killed Kennedy. Because the extreme right here attacks him. They're beginning to satanize him, that he wasn't born here in the United States, that he is black, that he is crazy, I don't know what else. So I hope, and this is our wish, that the government of the United States be able to reverse course and to respect our Americas. But given the winds that blow, 7 military bases in Colombia. Well, what do you think about that? Not 1, 7. Why, Obama? Why, Obama? For the peace that you are advocating, well, you have to be consistent. Otherwise, that means there are 2 Obamas. One, the one who spoke yesterday about peace, and the other one, the one who has 7 military bases in Colombia and the 4th Fleet. The 4th Fleet. Why, Obama? Obama, let's come together. Why? To fight together against hunger, against poverty, against the effects of climate change, and against the causes, so that we can save humanity. And I would be willing to work on the 4 pillars that Obama proposed yesterday. This was yesterday's Obama, because there are 2 Obamas. Careful. There's a double somewhere.
President Chavez, my name is Tala Shahi. I'm from Talk Radio News Service. You have attacked a lot of the press in your country. The shutting down of RTV and a number of other independent press have been muzzled in previous years. How is this part of your kind of grassroots policy if the independent media cannot have a voice in your country?
Es que eso es mentira.
That is a lie. You're stating a big lie that I've shut down television stations. Where and when? You know where they've closed television stations? And I haven't seen that the major media is criticizing it. In Honduras, they've shut down television stations, radio stations, many, in almost all the country. I haven't closed down one television station. Tell me which one. That's why I'm asking you, can you ask a reasonable question and tell me when and where?
RTV, for example, the state-controlled
R?
RCTV, I'm sorry. RCTV, your state-controlled media.
Oye.
Well, what is your name?
Perdóname, pero...
I'm sorry, but I'd like to speak with a lady, with a human being, not a machine. What is your name?
Off all these satellites all over the world, including in South America.
¿Y qué medio es el tuyo?
And who do you work for? Which media?
Okay. Aquí?
Here.
Okay. Tala. Mira, Tala.
Listen, Tala, now, at this very moment, so you can see how they're deceiving you here. And many of you, you're victims of a tremendous media campaign, a tremendous lie. The channel that you're referring to, you can see it today. It's a shame that I don't have a screen here. You can look for it. This channel is broadcasting from Caracas. How can you say that it's been shut down? They are broadcasting 24 hours a day. They have, I don't know how many workers, they have their managers. Do you want to check it? Do you want to go to Caracas? They're showing telenovelas, they're broadcasting news, public affairs programs that are critical of the government. They broadcast every day. Tala, don't be deceived. Yes, you know what happened, though. That channel did have a concession for the open signal. You know that there are open signals, and there's the other signal, the satellite signal, the cable signals. And so the channel had its concession expired for the open signal, and the state decided to put an end to this, not to renew the concession for the open signal. It's as if I hire you. Let's say that you're a lawyer, and I hire you so that you defend me in a case. And 2 years go by, and I decide that the contract is over, and I look for another lawyer. The radioelectric signal belongs to the state. You know that. It's not private. Well, in Venezuela, and I believe in a large part of the world as well. So we, in the state, according to the Constitution and our laws, we decided to transform that open signal into a social television broadcaster, a community broadcaster. Now, the channel that you're referring to is on the air 24 hours a day, and not from some sort of remote mountain. No. It's 400 meters from the government palace. It's very close. The whole plant is there. It's intact. They're broadcasting. You can see it. I invite you to come and see it. And so, you're asking a question on the basis of a lie, something that is untrue. But I'll tell you something, Tala, and I swear to this. I swear to this. I was born in Venezuela, and I grew up in Venezuela. I'm 55 years old. Never before did we have in Venezuela so much freedom of expression as we have now. How many community television stations do we have now? 27 television stations and 350 radio stations. This lady who is speaking here, Blanca Cauda, Minister of Information and Communication, she can give you more details on that, many details. When have they persecuted journalists in Venezuela? When they closed down television stations? On one occasion, in previous governments, they even bombed, they dropped bombs on an antenna to shut down a radio station. Journalists were imprisoned, journalists were tortured. They censored the media. They appointed censors. The government appointed censors in the media. And that ended in Venezuela. Tala. Now, what is flourishing is freedom of expression, the greatest freedom of expression that we can have in any country, a freedom of criticism, of thought. We are involved in bringing culture to the people, creativity, the battle of ideas. I love the battle of ideas. And so what you're saying is not true, the basis of your question. We are fully defending freedom of the press, freedom of expression, and freedom of thought. You know who doesn't defend freedom of the press? It's the heads of the communication media, the oligarchy. They're not defending freedom of the press, and they're imposing their will. The owners of the media, those are the ones who violate the freedom of expression the most. Journalists who don't behave as they want, they throw them out. A short time ago, President Cristina Fernandez presented a bill on that topic, and she said freedom of expression cannot be confused with freedom of pressure. The rich people who own the television stations, who own the newspapers. And in Venezuela, you know what they did? They supported the coup. They supported the coup. Noam Chomsky, I'm sure you've read him. They asked him a short time ago, what would have happened here in the United States if CNN and another media supported a coup? You know what Chomsky said? Well, not only would they have shut it down, none of them were shut down. Not only would they be shut down, but their owners would have been taken to the electric chair. I didn't say this. It was Noam Chomsky who said this. Come to Venezuela in any case, and don't be fooled. I can tell that you're intelligent, Tala.
Otra vez tú.
Once again, give someone else a chance. Well, President, you've asked me a lot of questions these days, and there's so many others here who want to ask questions, but go ahead. President, I'd like to base my question on Gaddafi's speech yesterday, where he spoke about a reform of the United Nations Security Council, where there would be respect for groups in the hemisphere, like UNASUR, where everyone would be able to participate and give an immediate response to situations over and above the veto power of countries like the United States. Do you think that at present there is a possibility, or would the United States government be willing to respect these blocs that have formed and where there would be sovereignty for nations? Well, inshallah, I hope so. But that is what we are trying to do. José Gervasio Artiga, you know, he said that we should not expect anything except from ourselves. It's not only having the United States respect us, it's that we have to earn our respect. UNASUR earns its respect. The African Union earns its respect. And joined together, UNASUR and the African Union, all the more so, we will earn our respect. So there will be a balanced world. And to answer your question more directly, I hope that and I wish that the government of the United States, as President Obama said yesterday, is only 9 months old, and he recognized that he gave rise to a lot of expectations, that it not fall short, and that it recognized the geopolitical weight and the sovereignty of the various blocs. I was talking about with the Russian Foreign Minister, Lavrov, and we were in Moscow. You have to respect Russia and the whole bloc, the Asian bloc, China, Europe, and then we will have a well-balanced world when no one will try to impose a policy on someone else, which was the grave mistake of the United States in recent years. Thank you for your question. Another one?
Grupo Peña de Colombia.
Hola.
Microphone, please. Mr. Peña. On what would be the circumstances for the restoration of a relationship between Colombia and Venezuela? I believe that what I'm going to say is very painful to say this. You're Colombian. Yes, and I feel that I'm Colombian as well. I'm sorry, but in my conscience I am a Colombian because that name was invented by Miranda, Bolivar, Santander, Marinho, Ricaute. This was Colombia. And they broke us up into pieces. We were part of the Great Colombia. Those who are not familiar with our history, the first Colombia was made up of Venezuela, what is Colombia today, that brotherly country, Panama, Ecuador, and Venezuela. The Great Colombia. They cut it up into pieces. And now, you know that despite the fact that Colombia is being governed by a right-wing government from the first day, for my first trip as president-elect, it was Brasilia, Buenos Aires, and Bogota. And I extended my hand to Pastrana, and I saw Pastrana cry because I spoke about Colombia. And from then on, I can't help but talk about Colombia with the passion that I have. I feel great pain for Colombia, perhaps. Not like you. But I feel sorry because I am Colombian. I have it in my soul. I grew up in southern Venezuela on the border with Colombia. And I love Arauca. I was born in the Arauca River. I'm a product of this land, of this earth. We are brothers. And we've experienced a great deal slander, calumny from the Colombian media that you belong to, as well as others. They slander me. They call me all kinds of names, whatever they feel like saying. And I've extended my hand, like Christ. Show one cheek and then the other. Now, with Pastrana, despite the differences, we were able to maintain a good relationship until the very last day, despite the coup that you know that it was supported from Bogota. Not Pastrana, but Pastrana's ministers. They said it in public. But nonetheless, I called him after the coup, and those who led the coup in Venezuela, they went to the Colombian embassy. And Pastrana, I called Pastrana. I said, well, I sent them a plane, and I respected the sovereignty of Colombia and his government until the very last day. With Uribe, I made 100,000 efforts. I extended my hand. What I got was accusations, lies. The last thing they accused me of, the government of Colombia, was that I was sending long-range missiles to FARC. Now, I showed them, and I'm still waiting for a rectification of that. I showed him that the rockets that they have taken from the FARC were rockets that were useless. It was just junk. That the report that was done by Colombian technicians, in the report it says, we recommend that they be destroyed immediately and completely because they're a danger. And then they say the Colombian government says that they are long-range rockets, that I support terrorism, etc. And I showed them, I proved to them that the Colombian guerrilla, long before I became president, they attacked a Venezuelan military post on the border, and they took 5 of those missile launchers. They're disposable missile launchers. I'm familiar with them. We used them in the Venezuelan army a long time ago. And it's those rockets. And so they say that I delivered them to them. How can you have relations with a government that profile, that lies shamelessly, that operates like a mafia? I think Colombia deserves a better government. Colombia deserves a better fate. As long as that government is there, it will be difficult. No matter how much I love Colombia, no, it's impossible. It's a government of lies and of slander. No, there will not be a restoration of this relationship. It's painful, but it won't happen. Trade is reduced to zero. Venezuela is going to trade with other countries, not with Colombia. Political relations are frozen. There are no relations with the government of Colombia, but I love Colombia. And I hope the best for Colombia. And that is why I said today I would make an appeal to the United Nations to set up a peace plan for Colombia. This has been going on too long to leave it in the hands of the president of Colombia who wants war. I discussed this with him many times. When I spoke with him, I spent hours talking with him in Caracas and Bogota in different areas. I said to Uribe, let us seek peace. I said to Uribe, you're not going to put an end to the guerrilla warfare. That's been going on for 60 years. And the guerrilla, I said to the guerrilla as well, when I was able to speak with him, when I spoke with the head of the guerrilla, and Pastrana asked me, and Uribe asked me as well. And I have never hesitated to try to help them. And I said to both, you're not going to resolve this. The guerrilla is not going to take power by force, nor will the government or no one will destroy the guerrilla by force or by weapons. We need political negotiation. And so that is why Obama is posing this contradiction. 7 military bases. I pray to God for Colombia. Welcome to Colombia. Thank you very much. We still have some time for another question, Mr. President. Yes.
La última pregunta.
The last question. Do you have time for one more question, President? Evan Hensian from... I am Eva from the DPA. I won't ask about Honduras because you were very clear in your speech in support of Zelaya's government. I wanted to say that it seems that you are fostering hopes that the General Assembly you said that Obama was showing a different face, different from that of George W. Bush. Would you like to have a meeting with President Obama to discover whether he has one or two faces, Mr. President, whereas there's one Obama or two Obamas? Would you like to meet with President Obama? And my other question is that recently the U.S. government has become alarmed over the situation in South America, saying that there is an arms race. The Department of State has talked about this. Venezuela has been accused of providing material to help Iran with its nuclear program. We have heard that said from in the United States. Well, I laugh about that. One day they said, actually someone in Colombia said, a high official there, that they had seen through satellite a bicycle factory which belonged to Iran and Venezuela, a joint plant, because under the bicycles they were enriching uranium. And I said to Uribe, aren't you going to set that record straight? And he said, no, that's a personal opinion, but this was said by a high official. Well, you are really ridiculing yourselves. And no, it wasn't Uribe. Obama compared me with, who is this lady who sells a lot of things here? Oprah. Obama told me that I looked like her, that I resembled her, because I gave him a book, and the book I gave him of the open veins of Latin America was number 77,000 in the list of sales, and in a matter of a few hours it became number 1, the bestseller. The next day Obama told me, you're like Oprah. And I didn't know who Oprah was. So he explained to me who Oprah was. And I said, well, okay, let's do business. All right, let's do business, Obama, but socialist business. Then so the bicycles, we now call those bicycles atomic bicycles, and they sell very well. It's a very good bicycle, and they sell very cheaply. Yes, now we call them atomic bicycles. We are selling through the Caribbean for children, for pregnant women, where you can carry things in the back and the front with 3 wheels, with uranium, without uranium. There are atomic bicycles. Now, that's really funny. And the world is full of these things. And sometimes you in the media, you put these things on the first page. There's nothing more important in this world than children who die of hunger in the world and of abuse of the poor. In Guatemala, there is a major drought now. Many children have died. Are you aware of that? They have died of hunger. We are poor also, but we share our bread. I just saw Alvaro Colon. We sent one of our small planes. Planes, they are C-130s, Hercules. Of the oldest ones, Venezuela has plenty. The first time I got on an aircraft, it was one of these Hercules, and I had to jump out the door. I was a paratrooper, so... and we have 3 of those left. Why? Out of the fleet we had, Obama's government refuses to provide us with the spare parts of an old cargo aircraft. It doesn't even have a gun on it, nothing. It's a cargo plane. And these are very good planes who land on earth, on mud, and 130 meters they land, they take off. And one of the few we have flying, we sent it to Guatemala. Obama, sell me the spare parts to these planes so they can fly. We're under a blockade. They don't sell us the spare parts to these planes. No spare parts for our medical equipment. Not the other Obama, not the one who spoke yesterday. The other Obama doesn't send us these things. I hope that Obama ends up by coming together and being a single one, as if one. I've been in a paratrooper. I've been in tanks, and we would look through the sights until everything we could see as one. I hope that Obama comes to being one, and in the end, it's the Obama who spoke yesterday. Now, look. I don't think he is two-faced. No, I don't want to accuse him personally. When we met, there was chemistry between us. There was affection. But he was attacked the same day. He was attacked because we shook hands. Only because we shook hands. Because he smiled, and what you think that we were going to be to threaten each other with a hammer? We're human beings. Last night I met a friend of Oliver Stone's who is a Japanese boxer, and she almost punched me in the face. But that's what people wanted. They wanted to see Obama and me punching each other. He was very cordial. He came over. He said, "Hello, Chavez." I said, "Hello, how are you, Obama?" So I don't want to attack him in a personal way. I'm not saying that he lies. No. Obama and his labyrinth. Obama, president of a country that is not African, it is not Latin America, a country which is an empire. And there is the Pentagon, an imperial power, and there is Obama and his labyrinth, and God help him. And if he helps himself, I wish that we could help him solve that major contradiction in which he lives. Well, Mrs. Clinton said a while ago that Venezuela was engaged in an arms race, that they were concerned. I don't know what's the matter with Hillary. I don't know. The lies. Papers that the Pentagon passes to her. I also said hello to Hillary there. She was very cordial, and she was criticized harshly in Congress, and she said that I was very sociable. She actually praised me and said something nice about me. Actually, it's true. I like society. I like to be friendly to people. And I came to Hillary. I kissed her. I held her hand. And I said, "Hillary, let's speak." At least when your husband was president, we spoke on the telephone. So don't let yourselves be pressured, because there are so many pressures here from the extreme right. Well, we haven't been able to talk. Now Hillary is saying that we have an arms race in Venezuela. No, there's no arms race. It's only that we have a right to having a military defense force. All countries have it. And in the who has the arms race in this world for 80 years now? The United States. Hillary, pay attention to this. It's your country, the United States, which has the largest arms race in the world. It's not Venezuela. Someone's going to throw us out of here.
Microphone, please.
Mr. President, yes.
Order, please. Miami Herald has the floor.
The reason I'm asking this question is we had a reporter that met President Zelaya last evening in Tegucigalpa, and he had told them, which we were reporting, that the Israelis were killing him. He accused the Israelis of using microwave generators and perhaps shooting poison gas into the Brazilian embassy. You alluded to something like this in your speech. I'd like to know what you can confirm or elaborate on, because at this point we cannot independently confirm President Zelaya's accusations.
What did you think about those crazy people in Miami who smashed Juanes' records? Isn't that crazy? Don't you think that's crazy to smash those records because he's going to sing at Havana? And they said to Juanes and Olga Tanyon, I admire her, and I'd like to send her a kiss. Even though she doesn't like Chavez, I like her. Olga Tanyon, Juanes, and they said that they were traitors. What madness. See how far madness can go? Poison. It's poison. Like when Macedonia, a friend of mine, we played soccer, Miguelito Carrera. Chavez has his people here as well. So, and they're booing him because they're friends of ours. We're friends. We're part of this world. The Miami Herald. That's where you're from, the Miami Herald. Well, I cannot confirm it. I'm simply saying what Zelaya told me, and I don't have any reason to doubt a serious man like Zelaya. I can tell you this in more detail. At 1 o'clock, I called Zelaya, and he told me such and such. He told me about the situation, and he said, we have discovered, and he has in his hands an interception and sabotage equipment, electronic equipment, to sabotage a cell phone that was placed in the roof of a neighboring home that was next to the Brazilian embassy. A friend went up in a tree, and he was watching, and he saw it. They grabbed it, and Zelaya has it in his hands. And he said, I'm checking it up on the internet. I have the technical specifications for this, and it's an Israeli manufacturing firm that did that. And so, well, perhaps a colleague of yours had access to this information, and so it's not strange. Israel recognized the government that carried out the coup. The United Nations condemned the coup, and Israel, well, they recognize the government that carried out this coup. It's not the people of Israel, it's the government of Israel, extreme right, genocidal government. Obama criticized them yesterday, but he fell short. What happened in Gaza? You don't know what happens in Gaza? I saw it with my own eyes. Ex-President Carter, who went to Gaza, he said that he was on the verge of tears. They killed, I don't know how many children. What is that called? Genocide. They should take them to the International Criminal Court, those who ordered that. The government of Israel. The government of Israel. Well, they say that I'm anti-Semitic. I'm not. I'm not. They're not going to blackmail me with that. I'm telling the truth. The simple truth, the plain truth. That's how I feel. And as someone said, with the truth, I don't offend, nor do I fear. And I salute the staff of the Miami Herald, very dear to us.
Hola. ¿Estás lejos?
Hello. Oh, you're far away. Thank you, President. Carolina Fagua from Colombia. My question has to do with your Actually, I'm going to answer very quickly because I have to leave. Someone has been, President of Vietnam has been waiting for me for a half hour. President Uribe said something in his speech yesterday. He said that instead of having more cooperation for peace and security in the region, many countries are looking to the arms race, using the excuse of improving their security. What would you respond to President Uribe in this strong criticism against the arms race in the region, given that you have established military alliances with Russia and also Ecuador has talked about the possibility of obtaining arms from South Africa? Thank you. Thank you. I have nothing to say to Uribe. He is a liar. A compulsive liar. What can you say to someone like that? He's lying. He's the one who has an arms race. He is the one who authorized the 7 military bases for the United States, the first military power on the planet. You see how he lies brazenly. He accuses us. They bombed Ecuador. They killed someone, some who were already wounded. They left wounded women, and it is couldn't be more cynical than that. But beyond this, there is a new world that is being formed where peace and truth will prevail. Thank you. I must go.
Pongo por delante de nosotros al comandante de todos los comandantes, al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo y su mensaje liberador, al Cristo y su mensaje de amor, de la justicia social. Y los llamo a todos. Los que quieran patria, vengan conmigo para que sigamos haciendo patria.
Let's go, Dave.
Documentaries. Why? It seems to be a passion that you found fairly late in the game for you, and you seem to be getting amazing stuff out of it, and you're very challenging work.
Thank you. I've done, let's see, I've done 3 on Castro. The third one I hasn't released yet. I just shot a third version of Castro in Havana this last August of 2009, right before we shot Wall Street. I went down there with a group from Spain for 3 days, and we did 3 hours with Fidel.
What got you into him in the first place? Because you have done 3
Accident.
films.
I was never a Fidel. I didn't know much about him. When I was in school, my dad was a big anti-Castro man, and he was the bugaboo, the demon of America in the 60s with the missile crisis. He was the enemy. So all of my liberal friends would fight with me because I was a different upbringing. I believed my father's world was the Republican world. Anyway, I met him, and I have to say, like many people, that he was extremely open, and we did 2 huge interviews with him in over 4 days, involving hours and hours, and he never backed down from anything, any question. I find in my experience that very few political leaders will talk so openly and charmingly. And he's, I have to say, like a good political leader, he is a movie star. He has that aura. That's not to say that he may be concealing things, and I was criticized for being this dupe and blah, 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 but that's not the case. I mean, I cut him off several times, not because of his political opinions, but because of his I felt that the pace, I was directing the movie. I wasn't an interviewer. I was like saying, here, we're going to do a hangout portrait of you over these 3 days. And we got that. We got the most intimate look at Fidel Castro, I think, that's ever been put on film.
Has documentary become too much about the result and the idea that it has to be balanced? Is balanced documentary?
Yes. I think it's the balance. What is the truth? I mean, the truth is going to be a few statement of ideas. You go for it, and you can make your argument, but there's always going to be the counter argument, and you can nip and tuck and you can nibble something to death, as the right wing has proven over the last 20 years of American political life.
Mhm.
You can always make the medical reform bill seem like a monstrosity by the time you finish, as I say, nibbling all the details. And they did that with me on JFK, and I
Mhm.
think we had a very interesting concept, and we had a counter theory that
Mhm.
really was substantiated by numerous interviews and research that I had done. I never made a documentary. My form was always the dramatic feature. That was my strength. If you want to call me a historian, call me a dramatic historian. I take drama because I don't write history. I condense it into a exciting format so people will watch it on film. It's not a book.
So you haven't deluded yourself into thinking that you have
No.
the answer to each of these?
No, a book you put down, you savor it. I love books.
Mhm.
You read a chapter, you savor it for the next time. A movie, you have to do it in a run.
Mhm.
So a documentary didn't grow out of a need to do history, but it grew out of a desire to reach for something new that I wasn't getting satisfaction from in films. I had done, at that point, 12, 13 major films as a director, 14. And I suddenly, in 2000, I decided to go into this field because Castro came up. The friends of mine in Spanish friends knew him.
Mhm.
We did it, and then we did another one, and then we did Yasser Arafat. We went to Israel. We did Persona non grata. Then we did, and all this time I've been going to other countries, meeting people, political people, finding out as much as I can from the field, what's going on in the field. But you know, I'm not pretending to be a documentarian. I'm using my ability to have access as a slice of life look at these people. Take it on surface. Take it for what it is. Chavez grew out of that. Chavez, we went to the research in the jungle. We went to free the hostages in we went to free the hostages in Colombia, which was part of an international group. It didn't work. There was a lot of political game playing going on, but Chavez was trying to get those hostages out. We went back a year later, and we did a series of interviews with him. And then it dawned on us to say, look, why is the American media so down on this guy? So we went on to 7 other countries, or 7 other presidents in Latin America, who all attested to his integrity, his honesty, and what he's done for Latin America.
When you finished with him the first time, before you went on to the other countries, were you convinced that
No.
the story had not been told properly?
I wasn't thinking about it. I had done a hostage. There was a hostage story,
Right.
but you know, I knew Castro enough. The Castro got me. Certainly told Chavez that we would be fair to him in the editing. We wouldn't be screwing him like a lot of people screw Castro in the editing.
Right.
Listen, the thing about Chavez is that he's a star. He's got that movie ability, that charisma, and you need that kind of person. I suppose I just saw Hun Sen in Cambodia, and he's been around for 25 years. He's a strong man. He knows politics, and tough guy, one eye, went to Pol Pot. Most boring guy you've ever met, because he's been in that position long enough that the only way he holds power is not to say anything. So a lot of these guys are like that.
Right.
The strength and the weakness of Chavez is that he speaks his mind too often. And as a result, he's made statements that have been interpreted by his enemies in this exaggerated way. But the solid man underneath that really cares about the poor, as I try to show in the movie. He comes from poverty. He has done more for the poor in Venezuela than anybody in the history of Venezuela. His hero is Simon Bolivar. He has led by example. The other countries of the region have been inspired by him, and that proof of that is in the statements by seven democratically elected leaders. And by the way, Chavez, despite his American criticism, has been elected constantly by the people. And more, he's had so many elections, George Bush could not say that he was elected legitimately, but whereas certainly Chavez could say that. So this is a genuine guy. And what shocked me and revulsed me was his portrayal in the American media as a demon, as it was.
Which is extreme. He really has become the new Castro.
But he's not a Castro. Castro has his own set of demons in his policy. Castro, you could argue, is a communist revolution, but you could argue that Castro became communist partly because of the American embargo and the American hostility. It was America that tried to invade Cuba twice, Bay of Pigs, and then went back in. The reason for the Cuban Missile Crisis, very few people remember, is that America was building up for a second invasion of Cuba, a serious invasion. And this was the end of Cuba. We also made numerous assassination attempts. Castro has done things that are perhaps harsh and rigid, but he has done nothing worse than the Chinese communist regime in Beijing, in fact, far less. And we do business with China. How we can keep this embargo, as Lula says in the movie of Brazil, President Lula of Brazil says, get rid of the embargo. That's the first thing that Obama should do, get rid of the embargo. And if he did that with one clean action, he'd have the guts to say to the right-wing Cuban groups that hold this country up hostage in this grip of paranoia that we can start to do business, we can start to negotiate, we can start to face with the Cubans who are good people. It's a good country. It's resisted much of the corruption I have seen all throughout the region in Caribbean islands. Many of them are bank havens, tax laundering. I mean, Cuba is beautifully pre-capitalist, if you'd like. It may have its own problems, but there's no corruption. Like, money doesn't talk in Cuba. It's important. And you must remember one thing about Castro and Chavez. Neither of us enriched themselves at the public till like most Latin American leaders.
Well, we have such a disconnected relationship with these people because they are iconified. I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah, but American politicians,
they've made it these villains.
American politicians all go out and make money.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Clinton, Bush.
Well, Sarah Palin's made $2 or $3 million
Palin,
since she
they
quit.
all go out and they score as much money as they can.
Yeah.
And then they complain about Castro, who doesn't make any money because he's weird. You know, and they point out they always come up with the human rights issues. And you know, when you compare comparatively the region to the rest of Latin America, from Guatemala to Chile to the previous abuses in Argentina, Brazil, there's not even close. There's not even close to the degree of cruelty. What Bush has done with torture far outranks Cuba, and what we've done with Guantanamo and our shameless judicial system far outranks what has happened in Cuba. It's this double standard that exists, and I try to show it through the whole movie with Chavez, is that the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, crucial instrument for enforcement of sort of a tyrannical capitalism, not a predatory capitalism, I called it in the movie. The IMF is a weapon of choice. You don't need to kill people anymore. You can just destroy them economically and in the media. And Chavez has been a victim of that. And what's great about the movie, if you look, I think you saw it, and I hope you talk about it. It's one of the few films that raises the issue of the IMF, which and how it's controlled Latin America as well as the world.
Are you compelled by? I mean, you seem to be in these countries that are enormous poverty and a lot of change that has to come. Yeah. Is it the people that compels you about these countries, or is it the powerful men?
Listen, no, you have to understand that when you go to a Venezuela or a Cuba, and no one will deny, certainly in the Venezuelan issue, that the people, the vast majority of the Venezuelan people, the poor, have benefited from Chavez's, and that's why he's so popular, and that's why he's won so many elections. Now, there are screw-ups, there's flaws, there's all these mistakes. You can't run a big country like Venezuela that easily.
Right.
But my God, he turned the oil revenues over to the people. He socialized their own resources, which is the aim of Bolivia and Ecuador, to own their gas, to own their water. You see, the enemy of these countries is not only the International Monetary Fund and owing money to that bank, but it's also the corporations that come in and privatize. Privatize is a very important word here. Privatize their resources, whether it's oil or water or gas. What privatization is the enemy of the people in all cases. In America, this is going on too, by the way. This is not a phenomenon just akin to, local to South America. We have privatized prisons. We've privatized our army. We've contracted so much of the Iraq and Afghani wars out to contractors that we don't even know about. They're shadow budgets, so we pay them. We privatized, the Republicans are trying to privatize Social Security and medical reform. We have turned over our country to insurers, bankers. We've become the victims of privatization. Where the public option that this country has stand for under the New Deal, under Roosevelt, is crucial, has been eroded by Reagan steadily since 1980, steadily and deliberately. And the Latin Americans, it's interesting, parallel our lives because from 1980 on, when we did well, Americans supposedly did well, not all, that Latin Americans suffered greatly, the mass of people, because the privatizations were punishing.
Yeah.
And it still goes on. I mean, there's a huge battle going on now in Latin America. We don't give up. We're out there trying to destabilize every one of these leftist regimes, every single one.
We being the government.
The U.S. government, the U.S. foreign policy, yes. The people who work in the State Department, who work in the DEA, the so-called Drug Enforcement Agency, which is a form of, espionage and military control. You send in DEA agents, you might as well send in troops, because it's the same thing. They become hostage to our foreign policy. And I would go across the board and say this is the same thing in Afghanistan. You know, fighting the heroin war, fighting for control of the resources of the world, whether it's the Middle East or the oil in Latin America. It's crucial that America, after the Berlin Wall went down, Cheney wrote the policy with Wolfowitz in the 1990s when they were in power, right before they left power, for a new American century, and they called for American domination of the world. One country domination that would never allow for the emergence of a rival superpower. I emphasized that in my last fiction film, W, about George Bush, which I hope you saw that scene, but I tried to lay out the empire position. We are an empire. We cannot be in denial about it any longer. We've become an increasingly potent empire since World War II, but we've also, I would point out to you philosophically that strength is weakness. The stronger we become, the more weak we become. Because for some reason, the more muscle-bound you become, the more steroid. You have weaknesses in your knees, you have weaknesses in your shoulders, you die younger. All these things happen when you take steroids.
Right.
America has gotten onto a military steroids, military dollar, what do they call it? I called it in the movie Wall Street, a steroid banking. Look at our breakdown in 2008. It's steroid banking. It was so inflated. When my dad was in the business, $1 million was an enormous amount of money. $1 billion now is considered the beginning of a hedge fund. You can't really start a serious hedge fund without more than $1 billion. $1 billion is 1,000 million. Think about that, David. It's staggering. So what we call I call it steroid banking, but it's steroid foreign policy. And when we have we have bases, military bases of some sort in more than 120, 30 countries around the world, this is a serious issue. We are no longer the America that I know as a young man, or what I believe. No, after World War II it started, but when I was young, I always thought that there was some restraint and some humility. I was wrong. It got worse.
Is there a way to stop?
Democracy won't work, in my opinion. It cannot work. We might as well auction off this country, because as long as politicians work for money, they can't possibly have an independent point of view, because they take
al Cristo Redentor, crucificado y resucitado, al Cristo en su mensaje liberador.
This is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio, broadcasting from the metropolitan New York area to the world. You've been inside the CPR Morning Show. Look at the life of the late Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, and we'll be covering that all day today. Up next is Bernard White and Emanations. Our sympathies go out to the people of Venezuela and working people all over the world, and we have to look at Hugo Chavez's life as an example for the rest of us. This is CPRmetro.org.